I do have a time limit for how long I can cast, of like an hour to an hour and a half max. So yeah. No, I can just bow out when need be. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Have you guys seen all the new hobby stuff that Games Workshop just announced?
No, what's going on?
Here I'll pop a link for everybody. But they have a whole new set of like production like model painting stands and stuff.
Weird.
There we go. There you go. It's in the chat. Like you can mount up a bunch of models on a rotatable, holdable stand now. That for airbrushing. It's interesting. I don't know if it's good. I like the color assembly stand and the painting handle XL. Those seem pretty rad.
That color assembly stand is like a really cool like AdMech Turing piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm seeing.
I might paint some superheroes today. Speaking of hobby.
Fun.
I think they're going to look really terrible, but I'm going to do it anyways. I don't think I know anything about painting superheroes. I think that's going to be a new experience for me.
Bright colors.
I want to make sure we have audio, and then we'll go. I don't know that we do. And no one's telling us. I didn't advertise this very much. Yesterday was pretty awful. So.
Sounds like it.
Is he doing better today?
No, and I can't get him in anymore. So. Oh hey, Mitch. I don't think you did anything, but just so I know, I saw you pick him up backwards later in the day. Had you done that earlier in the day when you grabbed him and pulled?
That was the only time I picked him up.
Okay, I didn't think you had done anything wrong, but just when I talk to a doctor, I want to know all the things.
Yeah, no, and I had no idea he was having back issues.
No. You're fine. I was just wondering if it happened while roughhousing, because if it did, I'd be more excited that maybe he's bruised.
Yeah, no, the only other stuff we did was all the normal petting, him going back and forth, and the normal scritching.
All right, so
I didn't see him do anything specific.
None of the listeners are telling us if we have audio, which is an unusual thing. So I will go find out. Give me just a second. I'll find out if it's working.
It's interesting how they have a whole set of like it all kind of is starting to work together now. Their assembly stuff.
Yeah. It's so weird.
Oh, we have audio. Okay, great. We're good. All right. Are we ready?
Mostly.
All right. Welcome to Best in Faction.
Podcast about playing competitive Warhammer 40K.
No, let's do it. Let's do it nice for like the first time.
I can't do it nice. You've had the wrong person for talking.
No, you're gonna do it. It's gonna be great.
All right.
Or we could have Lucas say a competitive Warhammer 40K. Wah. Was that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm all over it.
All right, so Lucas, I'm going to say welcome to Best in Faction, and you're going to say a competitive Warhammer 40K, and then however you like to wah. And you can do it loudly if you'd like. Are you ready?
Sure. I mean, I'm still waking up, so probably not. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, and people aren't going to be expecting it, so you don't want to go too loud and blow out their eardrums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to Best in Faction.
A podcast about playing Warhammer 40k competitively and wogging.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
I'm Chuck.
And we also have Lucas and Zach with us today. This is kind of exciting. So, you know what? No, I'm going to change that. This is very exciting. Lucas is on the show for the first time. I think Zach is not on the show for the first time, but it's been a long time. Have you been on the show before, Zach?
No, first time here.
Oh, well. This is very exciting then. So, for those that don't know Lucas and Zach, this is two of our best, our just best members of our meta, people we play all the time, good friends of ours. Both of them were involved in Charity Hammer. Both will be involved in Hammer Out Cancer, which we'll talk about in just a second. But Lucas and Zach went to a GT last weekend with Chuck and I, and Zach took 1,000 Suns to the podium and got first place. Lucas took Melee Orks, undefeated, and probably should have gotten first place, but got second place. We'll talk about that. Those two guys had pretty amazing runs. We're going to dig into that. But before we do, and before we get to know our guests, I did want to give you guys a little bit of an update on what's been going on with Best in Faction. So we recorded a special bonus episode earlier in the week, which has not been posted yet because I have a hurt dog that distracted my Saturday. But it will go up probably today, if not today, tomorrow, where the Hive Mind, John Lennon, Alex McDougall, Tyler Bortel, and myself talk through Octarius, which is deeply, deeply exciting. And I know there's rumors that we'll have a GSC Codex by the end of the year. And if there's anything good in there that we can soup up, it could be a really great time to be a bug player. So we're super excited about that. Also, we have set dates for Hammer Out Cancer. Hammer Out Cancer is the smaller, more locally focused version of Charity Hammer that we do. We don't know exactly what we'll be doing yet, but it will be a non-stop stream from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon, January 7th through 9th, to raise money for cancer. Wait, that doesn't sound right. To raise money for cancer research. That sounds better.
For battling cancer.
We should not advance cancer. We should not be like, you know what we need is more cancer. That's not the way that charity should work. So that's going on January 7th through 9th. The 5 people you see on this podcast will 100% be there. We're going to do a tournament. We're going to do a 5v5 Oregonians versus Washingtonians team event, which should be pretty great. Alex McDougall has just learned that the border is open and that he will be able to come down. And the GT that we'll be doing, I don't know exactly the format yet, but it's going to be called The Best in the Pacific Northwest. And the winner is going to win a giant, some sort of a very corny and cheesy wrestling belt that they will hold on to as the best in the Pacific Northwest for 1 year until the next Hammer Out Cancer, where they will have to defend their title. Because I won last year, we're saying that I'm the defending belt person, so I'll take the belt and give it to whoever wins. So that's what's going on with Hammer Out Cancer. It should be about 30 people, mostly locals, and it'll be January 7th through 9th. So put that on your calendar. Get excited about that. As you know, we do the charity events we do are the best content we create, which is a little bit unfortunate since we've made 96 episodes of a podcast.
I like to think that the podcast has become the premier place to learn about the Pacific Northwest meta. So, you know, it all balances out.
It's also the premier place to learn about Charity Hammer, which...
That's true. So
I've had a few people tell me that they listen to the show so they could keep up to date on Charity Hammer. And it's like, that's fine, great. I'm not going to do a Charity Hammer focused only podcast, so I think that's your best bet. All right, so that's what's going on with Best in Faction. We are all still intending to go to LVO, and we are intending to record an episode there live. I don't know how any of that's going to work because there's this thing, and it's a pandemic, and it's just everything's complicated. So that's what's going on. And now what I'd like to do is give us a chance to meet our guests. And as you guys know, who've been listening a long time, every time someone's on the show for the first time, we ask them to talk about who they are, a little bit about themselves, what they're currently doing in their life, how they got into 40K, what their favorite armies are, things like that. So, Lucas, what are you currently doing in your life? What stage of your life are you in? You're on your way to grad school or in grad school or something like that?
I'm in my post-undergraduate life. So yeah, hi, I'm Lucas, originally from California. Now I live in Portland, so I'm part of this Pacific Northwest meta. Lovely
Yeah, you
place.
are.
And yeah, I'm currently in the post-undergrad life, trying to figure out what's going on, but really enjoying and playing a lot of 40K. I started playing Orcs when I was in middle school, and I've done that pretty faithfully ever since. So it's like 12 or 13 years of just swamping the board with boys, basically. And then, yeah, I play a little bit of Space Marines as well, just because I really like their aesthetic. I play Minotaurs, which is pretty fun, and which is great because they can just be played as any chapter. But my real love is Orcs, especially the Horde. So there's some unique challenges with trying to field the Horde in 9th edition. It's not very conducive to the new codex, but I've done my best to play models that are faithful to the Horde and can still win me some games. So you'll hear about that this podcast, I guess.
Well, you've also had some relatively impressive performances here at my tournament center, have you not? I believe you
Yeah.
won. I believe you won an RTT where you were probably you and Tyler were the least experienced 40K competitive players here, and you won that
Yeah,
RTT.
and I think we ended up on top table, which is just hilarious because
Yeah,
yeah.
that was great. I'll try not to take Trogdor in the future. And then the other thing that happened is you were on the final top table against Deathwatch for the Charity Hammer GT, right? The prep GT for Charity Hammer
Yeah.
that seeded you into Charity Hammer.
Yeah, the prep TT I played against Fred. Unfortunately, the joke went that my list was Codex datasheet because I had 18 mech guns and 150 orcs,
Yeah.
and he was Deathwatch, so he just said, "Oh, I'm gonna kill 150 boys this turn," and that happened.
But to Lucas's credit, that was not at a time where Lucas's list should have gone 4-1 at that GT. Like that was well overperforming what that book should have done. Lucas is an incredible player because he is grinding on the style that he wants to play of orcs, no matter whether they're good or bad at any point in time, and he absolutely overexcels it. He overachieves it. He outperforms what other people are willing to do with that, and it's wonderful to see. His best friend since childhood, Tyler Bartell, went 5-1 with pre-Octarius Tyranids at SoCal yesterday.
Yeah, wasn't that awesome?
Almost 6-0, like really like 5 points off from 6-0. And both of them are playing underperforming armies that no one would call S tier. Well, Orc Buggies might be S tier, but like what you're doing in Orcs is nobody would call S tier.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are just grinding on one particular play style over and over and over again for a long time, and they've both gained such incredible expertise that it's a very different approach to what I do, to what Chuck does, to even what Mitch does. So it's wonderful to have you on the show, Lucas. All right.
Yeah, great to be here.
And Zach, we've been friends for a bunch of years now. I was even like Chuck and I were and Mitch and I, we were all at your wedding. Like we've done you a while now. You're not a new friend at all anymore. So what do you got going on, Zach?
Well, my name's Zach. I'm from Everett. It's about 30 miles north of Seattle. Right now, I am in my senior year at the University of Washington.
Yeah.
I'm actually 34, so I've had like a life and a career, and went back to school recently.
Good for you, by the way.
So I'm rediscovering what it's like to be a broke student. That's great.
How does that work with 40K? I hear 40K is a really inexpensive and easy hobby to be competitive with.
Oh, no big deal. Let's see. Right now, I'm actually really grateful that I have a lot of good friends and I can borrow hammer most of the models I need, so I should still be able to keep doing things.
I was going to say, as long as Zach's going to be putting up wins for Chaos, he's got all the models he needs.
I think you played, well, you played the, I'll let you finish your intro, but didn't you play the Vessel Plague Bearer thing for a long time with like all of Chuck's models? And you just like borrowed them and had them forever? Isn't that a thing that happened?
Yeah, so after I won Storm, I bought all the models to do demons and then proceeded to borrow Chuck's because it's like 80 models and I didn't paint them for 6 months. So I think I finished painting those models about the time the new Marine Codex came out and they were no longer required.
Yeah, you Plague Bearers. You're actually not needed anymore. Anyways.
I can't wait for them to come home.
So you are,
yes.
you've gone back to college. After you started a career, you had a career for a while, then you've gone back to college, and you play a bunch of different 40K stuff. So tell us more about your 40K experience.
Yeah, so I started playing 40K in 3rd edition, right after 3rd edition came out, when like all the indexes, air quotes, were in the big black rulebook. Very different game then. It was a lot of fun. And I played through 3rd to 4th, and then I took maybe 15 years away from the game. Maybe 10 years. And I came back when 8th Ed came out because, well, I came back a little bit in 7th, but it wasn't the best game to play, so I wasn't that attracted. But when 8th came out and GW had a new commitment to really updating their rule set, I started playing competitively. And since then, I have won tournaments with just about everything. But last edition, I won a major with Eldar Plains, and then I started playing Demons, and I played both TJ Lanigan's list and then later Jim's list. And then in 9th, I've been playing mostly Chaos. I played some White Scars for a while too. But lately, Thousand Suns, and I have found a concoction of Thousand Suns that seems to do pretty well. And we're going to see how far I can ride that.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's enough we can say about Zak's. Basically, Zak being added to our local meta a few years ago, probably 3 years ago now, 4 years ago now. Zak is incredibly sharp and processes math and facts and information at a speed that is frankly offensive. And when you play Zak, you can see the gears moving. He's an incredibly deliberate player, and so I think that Zak is seeing more success as he plays more complicated armies, and I'm excited to hear more about that as Zak goes through his games. But for those that listen to the show, we talk about Zak a lot because Zak and I have played in a million tournaments. We just play constantly. Zak is easily the other most accomplished player in the Pacific Northwest over the past, basically 8th and 9th edition. If you were doing a list of tournaments, it'd be Zak and I in wins, and then a gap before anybody else. So we've been very enjoying going to all these tournaments together and wrecking people together for a number of years now. So wonderful to finally have Zak on. And Zak also was the final finalist in the last Best in the Pacific Northwest tournament, which it wasn't called yet. You played, remember, we did the Hammer Out Cancer single elimination, actually no, double elimination RTT.
Oh, I am very aware it was double elimination.
Yeah, it was double elimination because Zak played a million games. Basically, Zak lost and then crawled his way all the way back to play me in the final round, so we could see for sure what Guard versus White Scars in early 9th edition would look like. Just so we could, and we had people commentating that are just like, well, I don't know what I expected from this game. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about the GT. The GT was in Olympia, Washington. It was called the Pecking Order. It is being put on by a relatively new group of gamers down there. I played their team captain, whose name is, Drew, I'm pretty sure. And I'm really sorry if I just completely botched that. But I played their team captain in the first round, which was a wonderful, absolutely wonderful opponent. They are streaming games. They are trying to build up that community. That part of Washington State hasn't been particularly competitive for a while, and they're really working hard. So I'm very pleased with that. I think there were about 40 people, but I'm going to check just in a second here on my phone at that tournament. Devin, his name's Devin Cross. That's the person I was talking about. Drew is not at all his name. Okay. So that tournament had 39 people. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with Chuck and I talking about our adventures, which will be brief. We're not going to go through all of our games. And then we're going to let Lucas and Zak really take up the majority of the time with everybody's favorite color commentary from Mitch. So, I took old Templars, as I talked about on the previous episode. I wanted to see Devout Push in its most broken form before it went away. I also thought that the Templars are the most durable. That version of Templars was the most durable army, and I thought it could give me a game into Orc Buggies. Not really what happened. And so I took it, and I won my first game against a balanced Orc list, which is what it should do to a balanced Orc list, that old Templar list. Then I played against Orc Buggies. I went second. He obliterated me. I made a movement mistake on my next turn that allowed him to obliterate me the rest of the way. I ground hard for 3 turns and got 60 points out of it, but I got obliterated. And it was a game that was not in any way interesting or fun. It was just I lost the Buggies. There wasn't anything strategically interesting happening. And then I played against an old Nurgle list from our good friend Jason Bird, who we've talked about on the show a lot. Unfortunately, after that, I had a combination of things happening where I had not really enjoyed playing the old Templars, but more than that, I was feeling very under the weather, and since it was a pandemic and I wasn't really having a good time and I really, really wasn't feeling well, I just opted to drop and go home. I don't normally drop from tournaments, but I just decided that was the right thing to do. So that was my adventure. Good news, though, I'm going to have a lot of Tyranid stuff to talk about in the next several tournaments. So, Chuck, what did you take, and what was your experience like?
So I took Goth Orks, mostly vehicles. I brought two bunches of Rucka trucks, 2 kill rigs, and 2 WAS bombs. I brought some Beast Nega boys to go into the kill rigs. I bought a Squigosaur, this brutal but cunning and Beast Mantle Squigosaur boss with Goths. Can wreck just about anything it can get its hands on, so it was lovely. That list is I played a few games with buggies. The Mega Tracks are great. I wanted to play a little bit more combat, and a little bit more like condensed, so that we have a lot of terrain on our tables. So I opted for the kill rigs. They don't have the shooting output, but they're also even better in close combat. So they treated me well. Real quick through my games. In my first game, I got a game against Grey Knights. I played pretty well. I got a lot of move blocking in. I held the table for a really long time, and it just actually physically forced him off of the objectives. So by the time he had killed most of my army, it wasn't enough time for him to score his points. So it went over pretty well. I won it it's like 80-something to 60-something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went into my next game against a Slanesh Chaos list, Emperor's Children. And I proceeded to play the worst first turn possible. I consolidated into his Noise Marines, which was just stupid because they have the power. They have a reroll to wounds that I completely forgot they still had. So my T5 didn't hold me there, so I didn't hold them in combat, which also lost me the objective, which I was doing Stranglehold and Direct Assault on. Like, I just lost like 15 points right out the gate, and he never let up from there, so he just wiped me off the table. And then I got a game against Knights, and all their guns were perfect for killing everything I had, and there was nowhere to hide. So I got picked up mostly on turn 1, and then I held on until turn 3 before I was completely tabled, and killed 1 small knight in the process.
Mm-hmm.
What I picked up from both of those losses, though, was I was not being nearly aggressive enough. Orcs don't have the kind of durability where you can hang out. They have enough durability to get them through one round, and then they need to be participating. Like, there needs to be combat. We need to be in your side of the table. So I came back the next day, pulled up against some Marines, a Death Watch army from a player who hadn't actually been around in our meta for a while, but it was great to see him. So Oliver and I played the game, and I wad on the first turn. I advanced charged Mega Knobs into his army. I sent kill rigs into him. I charged him several times on turn 1, and then just kept charging, and it worked great. Every time I thought, oh, I should be clever, I went, no, be aggressive instead. And I stayed to it, and Oliver was reminding me to do it because we'd been talking about it, and it was a great game. I pulled that one out by 20 points or so. And then the follow-up, I got to play his wife in the next round with her Drukhari. In my opinion, one of the most interesting-looking armies at the table at the tournament. She had like a heated metal look to all the raiders, to a really high shiny silver. So it's just got like blends, and then everything kind of popped. My plan against Drukhari is very good. Having 6 Rucka trucks means that I just shoot kill rigs and Mega Knobs into things. They get knocked out of their transports, and I pick them up off the table. She got some clever moves in. She killed off, she assassinated my Weird Boy to help me prevent me from Warp Ritual. In the end, that oppressive nature of just I can actually kill everything that they have meant that I got to win the game.
So you went 3 and 2.
Yeah.
What was it?
3 and 2, and I got.
Go ahead.
Oh, and I picked up Best Painted by like 2 votes. It was a tie at the end between me and another local area who paints incredible looking armies, and I got 2 more favorite army votes from the people than he did.
I had a thought about that, Chuck. I think you won the award for the thing that you put all the effort and time into. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you've been so busy with work, but you paint while you're working sometimes. Right? Like,
Yeah.
you've been so busy with work and with real life that you haven't had a lot of attention. You haven't gotten to practice new orcs that much. Like, you have not gotten that many games.
I played much better on day 2 because after day 1 I was like, okay, I've had some losses. Now I can think and go, okay, well, how should I be playing this list? And I played it very differently, and it performed a lot better, which is great. I just wish that maybe I didn't get practice at GTs.
So
But that's how it is.
here's a question for you, Chuck. Do you feel like orcs just need to play that way, and you just missed that when you were constructing your list or coming up with the tactic for your list, or do you feel like you can create a list that wants to maybe play in the more hang around, tactical, be clever way, as opposed to having to be aggressive?
I think you could make one where you're mostly hidden or move, shoot, mooting, and shooting at people for the first couple of rounds, and then have your things come in and then engage. But I don't think you can just be like, I'm just going to hang out over here and it's going to be fine.
Just not an option for the orc playbook. Gotcha.
I don't. But it's so far.
I mean, like outside of some variability, but that's just not what they're meant to play as. Got it.
I don't think so. It doesn't match what you would think of them for sure. So they certainly weren't building it on purpose, and I haven't found any aberrations that would make me think that.
All right. So, are you going to keep playing that style of orcs, Chuck?
Yeah, I'm going to splice it a little bit with some Evil Sons and some Shock Dome Dragsters, because I didn't actually like the Mega Knobs very much.
Mm-hmm.
They were a lot of points for not a lot of impact, but I still want some high AP something. So I'm going to try that next.
Okay.
I was actually going to play yesterday, but personal life got in the way, so didn't get up a tournament.
Your teenager actually wanted to see you, which was a rare experience that should be...
Drop everything.
Yeah. All right, so, and oh, by the way, we have a few requests that you and I stream a game of your style orcs into Octarius Nymphs. So maybe I think that's more interesting than the freebooters and Octarius Nymphs. But maybe we stream it next weekend and I'll go second and lose all my Hive Guard and be salty about it. It'll be good.
All right.
All right. So let's now pivot to talking about the tournament in our style of really going through the game. So let's start with Lucas. And Lucas, I would love it if you would start by walking through your list. And as you walk through your list, remember that we're the Show Your Work podcast. So when you're talking about your list, remember to talk about things that you tried that you didn't like and why things exist. You don't need to spend an hour on it, but and then I have this unit to do this sort of thing is what people are looking for. So could you walk us through your list?
Yeah, I actually got pretty lucky with my list at Charity Hammer, I played kind of the old Horde. I had a bunch of Death Skull, OBSEC, MSU units, and then I had big bricks of Snakebite Boys, and it just felt terrible. I could advance and charge in one turn, and then after that I moved 5 inches, so I'm like, I'm done with this. I need things that are faster. So I looked for things that were faster, that were still in keeping with my orky instincts of punching things a lot in melee in the face. So I immediately went to truck. Truck boys are really cool. Get out of a truck after it moves, and then get out 3, advance, move 5, advance, and then charge with a reroll. So they're really fast and they're really reliable, but just basic boys don't hit very hard. So I then went to knobs because their big choppas are a little cheaper when they're actual knobs and not on unit sergeants. So the truck knobs are great because they hit super hard. They have a 4-up armor, so they're relatively durable. And I wanted to run the trucker boss, who I'll talk about in a second, but he can give them +1 a hit. So the trucker guys are great. Other things that are fast, Storm Boys, they go 18 on the WOG turn and then advance and then charge with the reroll, so they're great. Commandos forward deploy, so they're basically starting in the opponent's deployment zone if I go first and I want to WOG. So those are all fast things, and I still had 2 units of boys, which was nice, but I'm thinking about cutting them. So I guess let me deep dive and actually tell you everything that's in the list. My Portland friends like calling this discount Drukhari because it likes doing a lot of the Drukhari things, but it just doesn't do it as well because because truck as opposed to Raider. Yes,
but it's a T5, so
It's true. Yes, I am a lot more durable, and on the turn in which I commit, I honestly hit harder, but I don't have nearly as much tricks, and I'm not nearly as fast on every other turn, not as flexible. So, discount Drukhari. Basically, what it is 3 patrols, a lot like Drukhari. The only reason I have that is because you have 1 war boss per detachment, and if you're not taking 3 war bosses and you're playing melee orcs, my humble opinion is that you're missing out on a lot. My 3 war bosses for this tournament were a Death Skull tank boss. He had +1 strength and attack for his warlord trait and half damage rounding up. He's great because he's obsec, because he's on foot. I had an Evil Sun Squig boss, who's my warlord. The interesting thing about the Orc Codex is that stratagem usage and taking relics is tied to your warlord's clan. Warlord traits is not. But if you want to use the Evil Sun Fire and Fade stratagem, and more importantly to have the Evil Sun's Fight Last relic, that makes you a little faster as well, you have to have your warlord be an Evil Sun. So he's my warlord. Yeah, he's got Fight Last, and he's got Artist Nails for -1 to wound, just to make him really, really hard to remove. And then I've got a Trucker boss. So this is a basic foot boss. He gives +1 to hit to the truckers, and what he does is he's basically a missile. He has the Killer Claw. He has Competitive Edge from Dark Eldar. He's got an Attack Squig, so he can get extra attacks. And he's got a Combi Flamer, and he's a truck boy. I think I had everything with him. Yeah, so basically his job is to missile out like 30 inches and go smash something really, really hard and then die right afterward. But given that he's 100 points, he does that really, really well. So that's him. And then... So yeah, 1 patrol's Goths, 1 patrol's Evil Sons, and 1 patrol's Death Skulls. I have 5 Death Skull Stormboys, 5 Death Skull Commandos, and a Death Skull Rocket Truck, and 10 Grots. For Goths, this is where most of the punching power comes in. I've got 2x10 Stormboys with Claws. I've got 2x10 Commandos with a Claw, a Breacher Ram, and a Bomb Squig. For those who haven't seen the Breacher Ram, it's basically a Power Claw with 1 less attack that hits on 3s, which is awesome. And it's only 5 points, so... If you're playing melee orcs, take that on your commando squads, especially if they're Goths. It's really, really good.
If it's 10-man.
Yeah, it has to be a 10-man. I mean, if you're playing for melee anyway, you're probably going to take the 10-man because you want the bomb squig, and at that point, just throw in 5 more points and make the squad hit super duper hard for 110 points or whatever it is, 150 points. Yeah. So we got 2x10 of those, 10 Goth boys. They were probably the weakest part of the list, but they were there. And that's it for that. And then for the Evil Sons, we've got 2 more Rocket Truck Squig Buggies. They're nice because they can advance and shoot with Evil Sons with no penalty. And let's see, 10 Evil Sons boys. And that's... Oh, and 2 trucks. And the reason they're Evil Sons is for 1 inch extra movement. I failed too many charges by 1 inch to debate anything else. So, yeah. All in all, it's 3 war bosses. Oh, and then 20 truck knobs with big choppas. So 3 war bosses, 20 knobs. Yeah, they're the most important part. 20 knobs with big choppas, 25 storm boys, 25 commandos, and 20 boys. And then just 3 rocket trucks.
Did you ever use the move, shoot, move?
What's that?
Did you ever use the move, shoot, move on the rocket trucks?
Very occasionally. I've used it in the past. It's really nice on the missions where there's sticky objectives. So your opponent thinks that their backline is safe or that their flank is safe now that they've walked their Terminators off of it. Like I just did this yesterday. And all of a sudden, the rocket truck zooms out like 40 inches and points objectives from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very funny.
So
I will say...
Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, good.
No,
I was going to say, I found the rocket trucks were also very good as Goths. The strength buff is super relevant, and then the sheer number of attacks, because I was using 3-mans, so it's another place to consider them, although your Storm Boys are there, so... Actually, not a good idea. I just said that out loud for no reason.
I mean, I like Goths anytime it takes you from Strength 7 to Strength 8. With buggies so much in the meta. I mean, rocket trucks punching each other is basically a nothing fest until they're strength 8, and then it's a very much your-sided favor punching fest.
I was going to say that on the morning of the tournament, I got a text from a friend. I don't think you know Lucas, but it's a friend that really loves orcs and has been playing orcs a really long time. And he said, Lucas is playing the Call-in orc list. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, if you were going to play orcs, you would try... He said you would try playing vehicle spam, and you would get irritated with it when it goes second, and then you would play what Lucas was playing. And I was like, okay, I'll tell him that. And then I had to go home, so I didn't tell you that. But I thought you might get a kick out of that. But then when you compared it to Drukhari, that makes sense, because while I'm not currently playing Drukhari, I do love I don't love how powerful Drukhari is, but I do love the way that the Drukhari army plays. Right? I do find that very comfortable. Zach made a joke about that in our final game of a previous GT, where he's like, it'd be great if the most powerful rule set wasn't also exactly what Colin likes to play. You said something like that, Zach, when we were playing Thousand Suns versus Drukhari at the Harbor Heresy or whatever GT it was.
Indeed, I did.
It was pretty funny. Anyways, okay. So, much like a Drukhari list, it took Lucas a long time to tell us the million things that are in it. And then in the first round, you played against Drukhari. And you played against Eleanor, who we just talked about, who Chuck plays in the final round. And I'll run through their lists, and then you talk about your games. Normally, we talk, if the game was close and interesting, we talk about it a lot. If it wasn't, we just talk about general takeaways and we move on. Just as a reminder. So, Triple Patrol, Strife, 2 Succubuses, 10 Witches, 5 Witches, 5 Witches, 5 Witches. Obsidian Rose Detachment, which is not actually terrible. Reroll Wound and longer range on your guns is good too. Blackheart's a bit better, but Obsidian Rose isn't so much worse that this is a bad choice. And Archon with Splinter Genius, interesting, the CP one. Then a unit of Trueborn, 2 units of Mandrakes, 4 Raiders with Dark Lances, then a Dark Technomancer's attachment that's got 6 Chronos, it's got 2 units of Incubi, it's got 2 units of Rax, 5 Rax, and it's got Drazar. So pretty standard Chronos list. Only real difference from the more meta standard is Obsidian Rose versus Blackheart, and I personally don't think that Obsidian Rose is actually significantly worse if you're not running like a court. The turn early on Blackheart is a big deal, but if you're not taking anything that uses that, rerolling wounds versus rerolling hits is interesting because it's often that wounding things is harder than hitting things with Dark Lances, because if you're shooting T8 with Strength 4, with Strength 8, excuse me, you're wounding on 4s, but you're hitting on 3s. So I personally would rather reroll the 4 than the 3. The other thing is that 6-inch longer range is a really big deal on the Trueborn, because it means the blasters hit at 24. So it's really not bad at all. If you're doing double Trueborn, I always do Obsidian Rose for the second one. Anyways, I spent more time on that than I normally do because it's Drukhari. So, Lucas, how'd that game go?
It was an interesting game. Round 1 was priority target. I'm trying to remember. I think I won the... Oh, no, she won the roll-off to deploy the first unit, so she got to throw down some Mandrakes first. But really what that ended up meaning was... Or no, I forget exactly what happened. But she moved the first objective, was the long and short of it, which means I think she's the attacker. And she moved the objective in her deployment zone further into her deployment zone. That was probably where she lost the game, and it did end up losing by like 50 points, 98 to 44. Because what I did was then I took the 2 midfield objectives and just moved them 6 inches directly toward me. And now she's getting 5 on primary and most to turn for the whole game, which was really not great. The other interesting thing here is that her Chronos are neither the -1 damage Coven trait, nor do they have a Homunculus.
Right.
So toughness 6 with a 3-up armor and no -1 damage is very susceptible to being hit by strength 7, -1 AP, 2 damage, which is what the big choppas are. So what ended up happening was...
Did you crump the Chronos, Lucas? Is that what you're saying? Did they get crumped?
I crumped 3 of them. I crumped 3 of them pretty good. Yeah. It's really fun when Dark Eldar players think their invincible Chronos are going to be really invincible, and then I just hit them with my whole army and they go away very, very quickly. Yeah, which is very funny. So I went first. Often with time...
Oh, did we lose Lucas?
You need to kind of set yourself up from the midfield. Midfield. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. Start that sentence over again. I think you broke up.
Sure. Oftentimes what happens with melee orcs is you take a turn or two to position, a turn to position in the midfield, kind of set yourself up for success, put your units in the right place, and then you commit everything in one wave and try to overwhelm your opponent. And the reason the rocket trucks are so vital in this list is because they can do early turn poking to force your opponent to come toward you. And then once you commit, they sit on the backfield objectives, and they're relatively small, so it's hard for your opponent to shoot them on those backfield objectives. So I positioned on turn 1. She kind of moved her Chronos up. She did an interesting thing where she split her Raiders, 3 Chronos and 2 Raiders on one flank, 3 Chronos and 2 Raiders on the other flank. So I just committed everything to the left-hand flank where her priority objective was, and the tail of the tape here is that she only got 6 points on priority objectives because I swamped that objective with so much stuff. And the turn in which I committed, I only killed 3 Chronos and a Raider, but her that priority objective was so inundated with orcs by turn 2 that she got it one more turn just because she threw 20 obsec bodies on it, and then she never got it again. She pushed up the other flank, but I pulled off enough shenanigans with. One thing to be mindful of is the Kronos can fall back and shoot and charge. So what I did was made sure that they couldn't do an advance and charge on turn 2 by killing some Mandrakes that were nearby and piling into them. The Kronos will kill a few Storm Boys, whatever, it's okay. And then the Kronos are severely hampered in the next turn because they're not advancing, they're not getting as far, they don't get to shoot their flamers on whatever they want to. Right. So they kill those Storm Boys that turn, whatever. But I basically committed super hard on one flank and mitigated the other flank for one turn. And then by that point, she was so far in the hole that I just kind of snowballed from there and picked her off at my leisure, essentially.
There's an interesting. I'm sorry, you guys look at something. I'll talk.
No, I was done with that thought.
Oh, there's an interesting takeaway here, and Zach, I think this is something that you actually see really clearly in 40K. So let's have you comment on this. Drukhari can most of the time just go. You can, if you're playing Drukhari, most of the time you can just move your models forward as much as you can, and you'll win that game. Like you can just go. And you can just wreck people. But the reality is there are situations where Drukhari have to play defensive. And if they don't win. And I think, Zach, that we saw that in that first Thousand Suns Drukhari game we played, where I tried to go super deep into you and we tied, right? Because I think that you actually like a game plan that doesn't involve going to your opponent's deployment zone, right?
Yes, I'll talk about that a lot more when I talk about my list, but I think that's if you're going to beat Drukhari, the key is to isolate them and eat them in pieces, and if they come towards you, it becomes much easier to do that with movement, whereas if Drukhari stands back and you have to go to them, now you have a problem, because they're going to hit all of you at once.
Right, and the other version of that, though, is if they split up, like you just said, right?
So, correct. That's another way to achieve the same result.
Yeah, so if you're playing Drukhari, think about this matchup. If I'm Eleanor, now I didn't watch this game and I don't know Eleanor, so I'm not pretending to know her world. But I would have been tempted to ball in one ball and let Lukas beat me on primary for a couple turns. That would have been my thought. Because the orcs then have to come directly at that ball, and then I can take the brunt and I can hit back. Whereas if I'm spread back, I can't hit back as well. So, Lukas, do you think that would have worked better if she had consolidated her forces into kind of more of one place and played defensively for a few turns and then tried to get points? How do you think that would have worked against you? Would it have been better?
Would it have been better? Yes. Would it have won the game? I'm not sure, because she has to pick the exact right time to actually start impacting the game. Because what I do is I pick secondaries to incentivize you to come to me. Right. Almost everyone picks no prisoners against me. It is the no-brainer. You should do it. But people also often pick assassinate because my war bosses want to get up close in melee, and then they're pretty easy to kill. At that point, you often picking stranglehold, banners, and then something kill-related. So at that point, I've got 2 defense-related secondaries. So I'm already winning on the primary. I've got more defensive-oriented secondaries. You have to come to me and influence the game state. And I'm somewhat hidden in the midfield, and I'm ready to pounce on you. So would it have worked better? Yeah, because she lost by quite a bit. But she has to pick the right time to kind of switch it up and actually start scoring some primary points and putting pressure on me. Because I was in the driver's seat the whole time.
Okay. Zach, if that's you making that noise, you're going to need to mute when you're not talking.
Apologies, I thought I was muted.
That's all right, man. Yeah, so I just think that that's an interesting thing to think about. That's actually what separates 4-1, 3-2, 5-0 Drukhari players, is the ability to decide when to spend their resources in those hard matchups. So I thought that would be worth talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So now, if I could throw a comment in there on Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that needs to happen whenever GW rebalances them is herd the prey actually means sit in the back and make my opponent come to me, which I don't think was their intent.
Right.
And I think rebalancing around that could really help improve the balance in that army.
Yeah, well, and there's no secondaries to take.
Complete BS. I hate that secondary.
Yeah, it's auto. I don't think I've ever not. I think one time I got 14. Like I think one time I didn't get 15. The reality for secondaries is Assassinate's actually terrible in almost every game, because what Assassinate is actually saying is, if you don't send your characters at me, can you still beat me by 15 points? Right? Like, like if I don't get 15, can I spot you 15 points, but you don't get to play with your characters? Right? That's the question. And I just think that's really rough. Right? Like, that's just, I just don't, I like, and also everybody takes everybody takes kill more against Drukari, which never works. It's like, yeah, you killed a lot more on 2 turns. The 2 turns I sent all my MSU at you, you killed a ton. But the other 3 turns, you did not kill more than me. And then it's only a 6-point secondary. Anyways, okay, moving on. Now, if you guys think Lucas's Melee Orks had an easy path, you just need to listen to what Lucas played against. Okay? I don't think you played against a single bad codex, even mediocre codex, the entire time. So you went from Drukari into Admech. And in your Admech matchup, you played against John Smith. I hope we get to have John on sometime, because I really like John's approach to lists. He's a good guy in our local, loves Tyranids. I'm sure he will have a Tyranid list that's different than what the rest of us are doing. I'm excited about that. So this is a Ryza battalion. And it has a Skitarii Marshal and a Tech Priest Dominus. It has 2x5 units of Vanguard with the Radium Carbines. Then it's got 10 Infiltrators, 10 Infiltrators, 10 Infiltrators, 10 Rustalkers, 10 Rustalkers, 10 Rustalkers. So 60 of the thick boys that do damage. I don't know, Lucas, does he have the Fight Last on one of these?
Yeah, on one of the Infiltrator Sergeants, he has the Temper-Copia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he's got 5 Chicken Walkers. In 1 unit, though, which I didn't actually know that they could be that big, so that was interesting for me. Then he's got 5 or 6 of the Flappy guys and 10 of the Flappy guys. So on paper, Lucas, to someone who doesn't know the matchup well, this looks bad for you. To me.
Yeah, it looks not pleasant until you start looking at the math of how my units hit his units, and then you realize they go away very, very quickly, because they all have 4 up armors and 5 up invulns. AP1 is perfect. All my stuff is like strength 5 with +1 to wound, or strength 7, winning them on 2s. So yeah, it ended. I also don't have the most practice in Admech, so I thought it was going to be not pleasant, but it ended up actually being pretty good. We played Sweep and Clear. So I took Stranglehold and Direct Assault and got 15 on both, because that's what my army does. And then I also took no prisoners, because his army has like 200 wounds in it. So that's great for me. The big brick of chickens are just so he can take Eradication of the Flesh. He also took Direct Assault, and he took Rod. So again, he takes 2 secondaries where he kind of has to come to me, and I take 2 secondaries where I can just sit on my objectives and score my points. So again, he's incentivized to come toward me, which is kind of a theme of this list. You don't want to have to rush your opponent. You want to incentivize them to come to you. So yeah, Sweep and Clear. John went first, which we both agreed was not good for him, because I was pretty well hidden. He rushed me with, well, a couple things about his list. He doesn't actually have the Cantic Thrallnet, which is the Warlord trait from what's it called? The Veteran Cohort, which allows a unit to be in double doctrine. Is that Gus? Oh no. Yeah, he does not have the Cantic Thrallnet, which is pretty integral in actually making those units go really, really fast. So there was a couple times where John had to spend CP on Advance and Charge when he otherwise didn't need to, because he didn't have that Warlord trait. We both agreed afterward that he should just put it in. It's 1 CP. So that's probably just a mistake in list building. But again, what happened was John went first. He rushed into the midfield with... or actually, I should talk about deployment, because some interesting things happened in deployment. He's got 30 Infiltrators, and they're Ryza. So I'm very scared. So I thought I need to be able to like zone my DZ out. I need to put commandos in intelligent places. And I threw it on my first unit of commandos behind a building, and he put something in his way backfield, just a non-infiltrator unit. And I was like, what's going on here? I throw it on 5 more commandos in the midfield. He throws another unit in the way back. And I realized he's going to wait to see where my commandos are to place his infiltrators. And I thought that was pretty smart. So I started deploying other units, and what he ended up doing was putting his infiltrators just outside of his DZ, but like really not that aggressive at all. So my backfield is pretty safe on turn 1. I think this was a mistake from him. I think putting at least 1 unit aggressively to take advantage of A, going a scenario in which you go first is good, because then that unit gets to run in, gets to do a ton of damage. If it dies, whatever. It's a 50-50 for that unit to do a ton of damage. And if you go second, whatever. It's 120 points or however much they cost.
170. Yeah, I think that not if you have Rise of Infiltrators, one unit is always a sacrificial like push. Like you can't afford, because even if you got to place your commandos first and you zoned out a mid point on the board or left or right, he can put them right on the edge and set the rest of the range of where you can put stuff. And that changes where you have to deploy entirely, because you now know where that threat is, so you're not going to want to give it anything important. So now all of a sudden you're playing in maybe one half of your deployment zone or 2/3. That's a much better, like they get all their points worth before the first turn is even rolled. And if you get to go first, then they just win you the game.
Also, you're playing a melee list, and
Yeah,
I like
that
to
too.
bait melee lists into the middle of the table. So like when we played our game of Ultramarines versus you before your Codex, Lucas, remember I let you kill my incursors on the first turn because I wanted you to be closer to me. And that worked fine, right? Like basically I traded an incursor unit for a big unit of boys in that game.
Yeah, I knew this is something that I do that I find very useful. Is I try to understand when I'm advantaged or disadvantaged and take risks appropriately. I knew that was a disadvantageous list for me to go into,
Sure, of course,
and
yeah.
on average, Colin's a better player than me. And not to talk about the game that happened like 8 months ago, but like I needed to take some kind of measured risk to, if that squad lived, and I think you overkilled it by like 2 boys or whatever.
Yeah.
If that squad had lived, then that's a green tide, and then all of a sudden things start swinging in my favor.
Yeah.
So it didn't work out, but those are sometimes the risks that you need to take.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you crumped the ad bank thoroughly, right?
Yeah. What basically the tale of tape for this game was on turn 1, he ran forward and killed 10 commandos. And I responded by killing 40 Sicarian bodies, disallowing an interrupt because of clever positioning. And at that point, he was definitely on the back foot, and I was in the driver's seat in terms of tempo. And from there, it just went really, really well for me.
It actually sounds to me like he lost in deployment. I don't think he could have let you have the entire table. I don't think that was going to work out for him.
I don't think he definitely was on the back foot after deployment, but then on turn 1, he over-aggressed way too hard and didn't play around me using clever positioning to dodge his interrupt. And I killed, 42 wound guys, and then he's in his back corner.
Well, he only has 60 of them, right?
Yeah. Well, he also has 20 sterilizers, so he basically has 80.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right.
Not great for him either way.
All right, so in case we hadn't had enough Mitch content, then you played Grey Knights.
Yeah.
And you played Jeremy Chalset? I don't actually know how to say your last name, Jeremy. I apologize. This is a battalion of sword bearers with a Tech Marine, and then a Grandmaster and Nemesis Dread Knight. Weird. Why would anyone play with those? Lord Kaldor Drago. That's fun to see Drago. I've played 5 or 6 games in New Grey Knights. I haven't played against Drago yet. Is he not good, Mitch? Is that the problem?
It really depends. If you're playing pure Grey Knights, you can make an argument for him. His main thing he's bringing to the table is the Chapter Master rerolls. He has a 3-up invo. Like he is a monster in combat, but like with Dread Knights basically covering any role he does for cheaper and more durable, and they're faster. He just doesn't necessarily. He's never fit into any of my lists. But if you're playing a slower, more balled up Grey Knights list, then he makes a lot of sense.
Fair enough. I notice he's basically the price of the upgraded Dread Knights, so that makes sense.
Yeah, he's very expensive.
He's 180, good. And it looks like the Dread Knights, one of them's 170 and one of them's 185. There are 3 Dread Knights in this list. One's 170, 2 are 185, so one has...
the difference there is he would have taken probably swords and teleporters on the 185 ones, and then he doesn't have a teleporter and probably has a hammer on the last one.
Yeah, and then he's got a unit of 10 interceptors, which I'm sure you guys are seeing a lot if you play a lot of 40k. 2 dreadnoughts with heavy plasma cannon and stormbolter. And then he's got a unit of 5 strike squads, and then 3 units of 5 strike squad. No, I'm sorry. A unit of 5 strikes, a unit of 5 strikes, and then a unit of 10 strikes as well. And though that's a mixture of swords and halberds. So, how did this game go, Lucas?
This game was pretty cool. It was retrieval mission, which is hammer and anvil with 6 objectives. So again, I did my normal thing and took 2 defensive secondaries, banners and stranglehold, and said, you gotta come to me, and when you do, I'm gonna hit you really hard. The cool thing is that this Grandmaster, who is a 3-up invuln once per game and teleports when you shoot at him, I literally do not care. I do not care at all. I'm gonna hit you with strength 7, -1, 2 damage in melee, and I'm gonna make you very sad you paid for those upgrades. So, yeah, this Grandmaster, he teleported in. He did a decent amount of damage, but I think Jeremy didn't quite realize what units were important, because when he teleported, he shot 2 rocket trucks, and I think he killed both of them, which is nice, because then his infantry's a little safer. But my truck guys are completely undamaged, my storm boys are completely undamaged, and I still have 25 commandos, and from there, I just rushed into the midfield. I think, again, on that turn in which I walled and committed, I think I killed like 15 Grey Knights, 1 Dreadnought, and 2 Dread Knights, and from there, I'm in the driver's seat in terms of what's actually left on the table and the points, and it ended up 98 to 55. The Plasma Cannon Dreads are actually kind of cute. They seem like they don't really do anything, but you can 1 CP to Wisdom of the Ancients them, so that you have the reroll ones from the Dread Knight character, and you have reroll ones to wound from the Baby Dreadnought. So it's kind of cool, but at the end of the day, you could drop both of them and take another Dread Knight in Prescient Brethren, so you get some extra CP too. I like that better. The Dreadnoughts.
Prescient Brethren is a must for Grey Knights, in my opinion. Like, yes. You just have, like, if you're Grey Knights want to take multiple detachments, because you can only fit 1 Grandmaster Dread Knight normally, and that's just not, like, right now they're too effectively priced to take only 1. Hitting on 2s with the shooting they have is just too good. And Prescient Brethren gives you access to some their really cool psychic power for when they move on a D4. They take mortal wounds, and like there's some cool stuff there. But the 1 CP is really, really effective.
Yeah, getting the CP, and also the 1 CP reroll ones to hit and wound for a Dreadnought.
For the Grandmaster Dread Knight, being able to do that too, hitting on 2s.
So good.
Yeah, so good.
It's so good.
I'm having such a hard time not buying this army.
The Dread Knights?
Yeah, I don't want to play the Dread Knights, only the Dread Knights. But the fact that the Dread Knights are so flippin' cool, and you get fast-moving, awesome infantry, I'm having a really hard time with this army. It really just, like, I wake up in the middle of the night and, like, I hear Gusta whispering from his dog bed, Grey Knights, and I'm like, shut up, Gus.
I played it into Speedwall last night. It was actually really fun, and it went pretty well.
You played into what?
Speedwall. Nick was playing Speedwall.
Oh, with Grey Knights?
I played Grey Knights, he played Speedwall. It was pretty fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so how did this game go against... Oh, did we already talk about that? We did talk about that. Were we ready to move on to round 4?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So you've played so far Drukhari, Admech, Grey Knights, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Just so we're clear. Okay, and then in round 4, you're going to play Drukhari again.
Yeah, that's right.
You're going to play Jonathan Starks. I had a chance to meet Jonathan at the previous GT. He's really new to the area. He's trying to meet people out here. I think he must be from California, because he's from the team that the frontline guys are on.
Zero Comp? Yeah.
Thank you, Team Zero Comp, exactly. I've talked to him a few times. Really seems like a really nice guy. I haven't played him yet. He takes Drukhari lists that are a little bit different, so let's take a look together here. He's got a triple patrol, which is... I still don't like the real space raid, so I'm not surprised to see all these triple patrols. He's got a Blackheart patrol. It's got an Ancient Evil Archon. That's the Fight Last Archon, just so we're clear. The first thing that I'm going to look at in your Drukhari list is if you took the Fight Last Archon. If you didn't, I'm going to presume I'm going to beat you. Like, in any army I'm playing. Like, just, the Fight Last Archon is so important that if you don't take him, I'm going to be like, what? Then he's got a unit of Trueborn, but he also has 2 units of just 10 Kabalites that also have Dark Lance, the Double Blaster. So he's taking 3 units of just I'm gonna shoot you super hard. Then 1 Ravager that has 3 Dark Lances. People don't like that. It's only 140 points for 3 Dark Lances, and you get to reroll one of them. I really don't think it's that bad. You can Fire and Fade it. Fire and Fading's 2 CP now for Drukhari, but you can Fire and Fade it. And it goes far when you fire, like, that's enough. Then he's got 4 raiders. Then he has a Dark Technomancer's detachment that's got a homunculus. It's got a big unit of the upgraded racks, which is kind of cool. They ignore the first damage that they take each turn, which is kind of neat. Then a small unit of racks, 2 units of Kronos, and then he's got a Strife detachment that's got a Precision Blows Witch, and a Succubus, and 5 Witches. I think this is super cool. This is leaning hard into shooting and minimizing the close combat of Drukhari. He doesn't appear to have Incubi. He doesn't appear to have. Doesn't have a lot of witches. I don't personally think that it's good to go this heavily into shooting, but I understand why he's doing it. This list should be better into Orc Buggy spam than what I play for Drukhari. It should be. But that's not what Lucas is playing. And I don't think Lucas is that afraid of Blasters and Dark Lances.
Dark Eldar list, and I have the I'm going to hit you in the face Orc list.
Yeah.
Yeah, this game was interesting. We played battle lines, and the 2 middle objectives. When I play battle lines, I need to look at where the 2 middle objectives are. Are they safe? What angles are they safe from? They were safe from like the majority of his DZ, other than the 2 flanks. So I figured if I go first, I just stick some commandos on those. I do my normal banners and stranglehold, and I force him to come and start engaging me. And I'm going to take some casualties on turn 1 because Dark Eldar are fast and they can cut the angles that they need to. But then he's going to be in the midfield, and then I can punch him really, really hard. So that's what I did. I ended up going first. I took Stranglehold, banners, and one of the Orc secondaries, I actually wanted to talk about this, Stomp 'em Good. The Orc secondaries are kind of a miss. One of them is okay for my list, which is Stomp 'em Good. It's basically kill more in melee, and if you kill 2 or more and twice as many as your opponent, you get an extra point. It's good in matchups where you're going to be running at your opponent, and they don't have a lot of melee counterpunch. The thing about John's list is it's not actually a lot of melee. He has the Archon without reroll hits and wounds, so he's like okay at fighting. He's got the Casino Succubus, so that's liable to not do anything at any particular point in time.
Yeah.
Or just instantly kill.
I'm having a hard time, Lucas, even leaving her in the list. Like, I understand that she's amazing for her points, but the fact that sometimes she does nothing is just so hard for me.
I like her, but I don't like her without the Triptych Whip competitive edge one.
Oh yeah.
If you're gonna take her, at least take the normal one. That's insane.
Yeah.
So.
You mean the one that would kill any of the units in your army in one go? Right? Like that's what the Witch one does. That's what the Whip one does. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically his melee is Drazar, that Archon who's okay, and the Casino Succubus. So turn 1, I positioned in the midfield. I raised some banners, and I said, "You're gonna have to come to me." He puts 2 raiders on my left flank. He puts 2 raiders and a Ravager on my right flank, and he moves his 6 Kronos with the Homunculus into that ruin on my right flank, and he flames a bunch of stuff. So the difficult part here is that his Kronos aren't -1 damage, but they are T7, which is scary because my Trucker Boss is strength 12 and my Truck Knobs are strength 7. But I kind of plan out my turn, and I see that I can hit those Kronos with basically every unit in my army. And that's what I do, and I kill 5 of them, and I kill a raider. And at that point, he's got 80 orcs in his face, and they're all in a ruin. And the thing is, orcs have bad saves until you take commandos and knobs, which are on a 4-up basically, and you stick them in cover so they're on a 3-up. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of random poison shots aren't actually killing them, so you have to come dig them out in melee. And oh, look at that, you only have 3 melee characters, and I have an interrupt somewhere. Oh, unfortunate for you. So yeah, that's basically, I won the game on that turn. I kept him to a 0 on primary that turn, and he got, let's see, what was it? He only got 8 points on Herd the Prey. So that was very exciting for me because I hate that secondary and it's ridiculous. But that was because I left a token force on the left flank, and it took him a couple turns to kind of chew through that, and that whole time it was in his quarter. And on the other flank, obviously, I had thrown my whole army into that, so it took him forever to clear that quarter out. So we ended up getting a bunch of points late game on that. But yeah, basically...
I think he made a challenge for himself here, Lucas, because Horde armies are suspiciously weird for Drukhari. One of the reasons why I was going Witch heavy in the GT that I won a month or two ago, was because Admech was going so Horde, and Poison just doesn't kill things. Like, I've killed Be'lakor with Poison. Like, Poison does weird things. But Poison doesn't kill Horde armies that have any armor save of any kind. So Shredder Scourges are bad. They're just, I played them for a long time. They're just not good. So if you want to kill the hordes, you have to have Hellions and Witches. And it's not even Incubi. You literally just need Witches. A unit of 10 Witches has 41 attacks at Strength 4. That's not amazing against Lucas, unless you reroll wounds on him, right? And it's not like Lucas has armor saves, so every 5 you're getting on the reroll wounds is probably killing an orc, right? That's a much more interesting trade fest. In his army, what I would have done is I actually would have put empty raiders in front of the Chronoses and moved it as a ball up the field, and accepted that if he wants to charge the Chronos, it's only going to be with Storm Boys if I've left a gap in, like, I would make Lucas try to kill the raiders to get at the Chronos and hope that the Chronos rolled hot, literally, with that list. That's my thought when I was looking at this matchup when Lucas was playing it, as I was sick as a dog in bed, being like, I hope Lucas wins this. I'm like looking at the list and I'm like, what would I do if I were Starks?
Yeah, the empty raiders prospect is interesting. I also thought, what if he just puts 3 Chronos in front to force me to commit something real to kill them, because otherwise they're going to be a problem on the next turn.
Right.
/ empty raiders, whatever. As long as you still have 3 Chronos to operate, you know, and do what you want to do with them as the Dark Eldar player the turn after I commit, that's good, because that's what I mitigated in the Eleanor game, and that's what I just straight up killed when I played against Starks, because he had all 6 in the midfield and I got to hit all of them.
Right.
Having 3 Chronos to go and flame whatever you want to and then charge whatever you want to the turn after I commit is like integral. Like, it's the most important thing if you're playing Dark Eldar. And neither of my Dark Eldar opponents actually did that. They were too aggressive with them, or they kept them too out of the way. There was no middle ground, and I took advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's a super helpful takeaway for you to share.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, yes, I understand Drukhari are too powerful, and I understand that a lot of you just get brute forced off the table by them. But I'm telling you that as soon as an army has the tools, like Lucas does, and like Zach does, and like Chuck's army does, and like Grey Knights do, as soon as an army has the tools, you have to play the army right. And if you go too aggressive, you're going to get hit, and you're going to lose. So
yeah, Dark Eldar want to play their game. You as the enemy to Dark Eldar never want to play their game. So just build a list, pick secondaries to not play their game, and then you can win.
Yep. Okay.
I'm gonna have to bow out, guys. I will
All right.
see y'all later.
Yeah.
Bye, Mitch.
Bye, Mitch.
See ya.
Bye.
All right. So the round 5. This is the coolest game I think we're going to talk about. So you played Nicholas Olsen Johnson, who I call Naj, because Nicholas Olsen Johnson is a lot to say. And also because Nick is Nick Nanavati. Like, if you say Nick in 40K, you're talking about Nick Nanavati. You're not talking about Nick Olsen Johnson. So, I call him Naj. I don't know if he likes that or not. He has come... What's that?
Never mind.
He has come like 3 inches from winning so many tournaments, right? Like, he's done... He is doing so well. And he brought absolute bullshit. Excuse me, Naj, what you did. So his list is the freebooters. And he has a Big Mac and Mega Armor, a War Boss on Warbike, 10 Gretchen, 2 units of 5 Commandos, 2 units of 5 Storm Boys, 2 Daka Jets. That's all freebooters. Shocking. This is all freebooters. Then he has a Beast Boss on Squigosaur, 3x2 Megatrack Scrap Jets, 3x2, 2 2-in-1 Squig Buggies, and another Daka Jet. So he's going heavy into the Daka Jets. I personally think that if you're playing Orcs and you're not taking Waz Bombs, you don't understand the meta. But he went 4-1 and lost to Lucas. So, like, I'm sure he's doing great. I'm such a fan of the Waz Bombs. So, looking at this, my friend group and I were talking, and we determined that Lucas would lose this game. That's what we thought would happen. That was our prediction.
So did I.
So I want Lucas to talk about this game, and Chuck, I'd like you to be the host, the interviewer on this one, because I think you'll understand these 2 armies better than I will. So, Lucas, with Chuck's color questions, go for it.
Yeah, so this is probably my most interesting game. It was certainly the most difficult one, so I'll take a little more time to walk through actually what happened. The first thing to note is that the Daka Jets are perfect at killing toughness 5 models with a 5-up save and cover. So that's not great for me, and he has 3 of them. I don't really care about the Wazbomb because it's casino machine, and the most important thing it's shooting at is a truck.
Well, he doesn't even have one,
so
right?
yeah, no, if he had a Wazbomb. So I'm saying Dakajets are worst case scenario for me. So like Nick's list in terms of speed wall is like it's already a bad matchup, and the 3 Dakajets made it a lot worse.
Right.
I looked at all the variables here, and I determined that I really wanted to win the defender roll-off, so I got to drop 10 commandos on like 60% of the midfield. We're playing Dawn of War, by the way, hold 2, hold 3.
Overrun.
Overrun. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, overrun the Dawn of War mission.
I think that's actually, I think that's probably the single most important part of how you possibly won this game.
Yeah. He got 5 points on primary, and it was a fluke. I rolled horribly bad, and he got 5 points because of that. Yeah, so I really wanted to win the defender roll-off, so I got to drop commandos. And more importantly, I needed to go first, or I was going to lose 80% of my army. So with that in mind, I deployed on the line. There was no point in deploying defensively because 2/3 of his firepower just dodges line of sight because it's a plane or a rocket truck. So why not just position in the most advantageous way possible?
Hold on.
I picked...
That is so important. Like that, what Lucas just said is massive important. He said, his army will shred me if I go second, no matter how I deploy, and so I'm going to deploy on the line. And there's a bunch of games where that's important, and in fact, there are arguments for putting Marines on the line against Ork buggies. Of just deploy on the line and hope you go first. So, like, I think that that's an important takeaway. I just want to pause on it. Go ahead, Lucas.
I think as a player, it's always a good idea to you look at the game and say, what gives me the highest percentage chance to win this game?
Yep.
If that is 50% chance and I have to go first, well then you take that one. You take whatever the highest percentage chance is.
Mm-hmm.
Stay out of the lose slowly bracket, right?
Yeah.
And just go for it.
Even despite all of that, this game is still massively disadvantaged for me. It's just even with me going first, I'm clearing his screens and 2 squads of Mechatrax one squad of 2 Mechatrax, and I'm really wounding a plane with some Storm Boys. That's how I did on turn 1. Nick flew over and killed 1,300 points of my army on the clapback. 1,300 going second, and I tagged 2 squads of buggies.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was absolutely insane.
So Dakajets are good against you, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, they're very good, and I even had one degraded, but it just doesn't matter. So,
did he use the planes to screen most of your close combat, or
yeah,
keep you away from him?
He kind of built like a long river of basically all of his infantry models body blocking me, so I couldn't physically walk there. And then he had on the other flank where I put my Storm Boys, he had the 3 planes kind of lined up long ways, so I couldn't actually get into all the buggies. I really want to tag the rocket trucks at the end of the day, because the Mechatrax can just shoot me in combat. Yeah.
Okay, so you lost almost your whole army on bottom of 1, but you won.
Yes.
So what happens next, Lucas?
Right. So he kills 70% of my army. I get 5 points on primary, and I'm like, holy crap, how am I going to win this game? I can't shoot the Dakajets. I can't use my 10 remaining Storm Boys to go and kill Dakajets. That's really tempting, and it's really what I want to do, but I can't. I need to kill everything that's not his unkillable beast boss and the Dakajets. Because it's a whole 2, whole 3 mission, and again, like I said, I lose this game in 99 out of 100 scenarios. Nick took Engage, No Prisoners, and Assassinate. So no prisoners engaged are going to be really good for him, so I need to make sure he gets a 0 on primary. So what I do with those Storm Boys and the remaining couple War Bosses and Boys I have is just keep pushing into his zone, keeping him away from the primary points, stealing the objective that is unkillable beast bosses on via movement shenanigans. And I need to keep him to a 0, and I need to get at least 5 more primary points myself. So I do that via clever positioning and that kind of stuff. Nick and I basically ended up swapping sides because all I had left by turn 3 was the Evil Sun boss and the Death Skull boss, both of whom are actually pretty good at killing buggies, by the way. And all he had left was 2 Dakajets and a Beast boss. So I accomplished my goal. My goal was to put him down to basically 1 unit on the ground so that he couldn't get primary points any longer. And from there, it's basically just a grind of making sure he doesn't kill my characters for Assassinate, and that's just positioning around where his Dakajets are going to be this turn and next turn. So yeah, interesting game overall. Nick and I are roommates, so we talked a lot about this. He really should not have lost this game. He did not set himself up for success by taking Assassinate. He's not going to shoot my characters on the speed wall turn, and by the time the speed wall wears out, he's not actually killing them with Dakajets, and that's all that's left. He should have taken Rod, he should have put his Storm Boys in reserve, and that would have served the double purpose of not only getting more Rod points, because he only got 3 on Assassinate, he would have instead gotten like 8 Rod points, so it's 5 more net there. And then on turns like 3 and 4 and 5, he hops onto my backfield objectives when I have nothing left, and then he gets like 15s on the primary instead of 0. So... yeah, did I win this game against Nick at this tournament? Yes. Do Melee Orks have a chance against Speedwall in the general case when the Speedwall player knows exactly what they're doing? Absolutely not. Even going first. But yeah, still.
And I think that's okay. I think that's okay to say, right? Because, like, we're talking about Arterius Nids right now, and we're in the boat of... I'm talking about the Hivemind chat that you guys, from the previous episode. We're in a boat where we're like, do we gear hard for Orc buggies, or just accept that it's bad if we go second, right? Like, if we gear hard for buggies, we're weakening ourselves against the rest of the meta. But otherwise, like, I think that's the question until they get nerfed that everyone has to ask. What is your answer going to be? If you lose going second, maybe don't skew your army to try to survive going second if you still can't win, and just be Lucas and just beat people anyways, right? Maybe that's the strategy.
Yeah. I'm acknowledging that the buggy matchup is 99 times out of 100 a loss. And that's cool with me. They're broken. They're really dumb. I don't really care. I don't really see the need to tech around them or think about the matchup. I hope I dodge them. And if I don't dodge them, I hope my opponent makes a mistake or doesn't bring 3 Dakajets. And then I want to tool my list up to beat all the other A and S tier armies. So, like, I have a great game into Grey Knights. I have a really good game into Dark Eldar. I have an okay game into Admech. I need more practice there. But yeah, the list feels good into everything that's not Speedwa, and I'm okay with one bad matchup, even if it means that I really honestly shouldn't win a tournament.
Lucas, the next time we're in the same place, provided it's before Drukhari inevitably get nerfed into the ground. I feel like my style of Drukhari into your Orc list is actually an amazing game where we would have the best time.
We should totally play that.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think not, because I don't play the Kronos version. I play close combat heavy with all the jank, right? So like it's the most fun.
That poses a different set of questions for me to answer, which are more difficult, but at least I don't have to deal with Kronos. So
right.
I mean, it still takes all 2,000 points of my army to kill the 6 freaking things. So yeah,
that's pretty funny. Chuck, any final Orc thoughts or questions for Lucas before we let Zach talk?
Yeah, you showed me your list before we went to the event, and we were talking about it. And one of the things I asked about was your army is, I would say, almost 90% AP1, a little bit of AP2 on the shooting, and then some of the characters can get bigger. Do you ever feel like that got in your way, or has it gotten in your way in other matchups or anything, or you make your way through pretty all right?
It can be an issue into like classic melee Marines with a bunch of storm shields. It was way worse when we were AP0. AP1 still isn't great because we cut down our squad sizes, but it's okay overall. Really, the problem is like a close combat unit that ignores AP1 and 2. Black Templar, one of my best buddies in Portland plays Black Templars. There's a new Sergeant upgrade you can give this guy to make him ignore AP1 and 2. Mm-hmm. That guy's a problem because he has AP1 and 2 ignore. He's a Blade Guard in cover, and he has a 5 Feel the Pain from the Litany. So basically, the only thing that's going to kill him is the Trucker Boss. And even then, it's like a lot of coin flips because he can transhuman them. So.
Oh, then the Trucker Boss has to go through. You can just put it into the squad first.
Yes.
Or like it's very awkward.
So I have to hit them with my fight last, make him take saves on the sergeant guy, then hit him with the Trucker Boss, and then hit him with the rest of my army, and then even then I wipe out only half the unit. So that guy's a serious problem. So melee Marines in general, anything that ignores AP1 and 2 is a hassle. But overall,
we didn't want to play. We did not want to play. We did not want, like, you wanted to play, but we were convinced that all the Terminators and Storm Shields in the Templar army were just going to be awful for you.
Yeah. In general, all I do there is just I try to ignore the Terminators as much as possible and simplify the board down to you have a couple of characters and Terminators, and I have stuff in all corners of the board, and then hopefully I can win from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree with that.
Same with the old Dark Angel list. And then the other part is just to sort of acknowledge, I feel like I'm just catching up to you. The thing I changed on my list was to bring the Evil Sons in so I could get the fight last But I like because I felt like I needed it, and I was like, oh, and you just talked about one of your games. I was like, if I just listened to this beforehand, I could have just done this before this tournament.
That guy is super cool because he also moves anywhere between 15 and 20 inches in the walk turn, and then charges with a reroll. Oh, man's is fast.
Chuck, does this make you want to play that list instead of yours?
No, because the kill rigs are a different kind of amazing. It does make me want to put a unit of those knobs in. I like reducing redundancies and trying to make those decisions, but like there are a lot of points, so that's going to be hard to figure.
Okay. All right. Well, I think what's really great here is that I think once the game gets nerfed, I think we're going to get a points update at some point, and when we do, I would imagine, hypothetically, I don't know this, I'm not a playtester or anything, but I would imagine that buggies will get more expensive, and I think that'll be really hard on the buggy vehicle lists. And I think that Lukas is playing without, if the S tier gets nerfed, I think Lukas is playing a very relevant and competitive thing. And that's wonderful to see because he's playing an actual orc list. He's not just spamming 3 data sheets that are undercosted, which is what the buggy list is. So, 3, Rocket Truck, Scrapjet, Dakajet, and Lasbomb. I'd say all 4 of those things are underpointed in the current.
The mecha track is the most defensive thing. Change the mecha track, and everything changes dramatically.
Oh, yeah, when I played Steve, I was pretty blown away by how much of my army died to the mega tracks. Just like, they're pretty crazy. Okay, you've been very patient, Zach, but Lukas was doing such a great job. I didn't want to hurry him along.
I'm happy to wait.
Yeah. So Zach took something that I think is even more amazing to go undefeated with than Melee Orks. He played Chaos, which if you've listened to the show a long time, you know is literally the thing that I punch for humor all the time. I absolutely do not like the way they write Chaos rules. Zach and I talk about this all the time. I believe I was the final straw in you ditching Death Guard, I think. We played Tyranids into Death Guard in an RTT, and afterwards I was just honest with you about that matchup, and you're like, oh yeah, I see all of that. And it was frustrating. But we both love the Thousand Suns book. We love it, both of us. I think it's great. And so I'm so hyped to see you all in on it. And I think that this is the best first Zach appearance we could have had. Because it's chaos that like nobody's winning with. The list you've made is uniquely Zach. You were not net listing off what anyone else has done. And you played your butt off. So before we let Zach dive into that, I do want to cover one thing because the locals are all going to know about this. Because of the size of GT it was, the bottom undefeated played into a one-loss person multiple times. Because of the way Zach's battle points went, that was Zach a lot of the time. So Zach's path included playing a lot of one-loss people on his way to being undefeated. This happens. The reason this happens is because battle point pairing is dumb, and it isn't the way tournaments should be run. And in fact, that tournament is not doing it by battle points again. Jason Bird, who runs most of our tournaments here, has already ditched it, and Frontline is talking as well about not pairing based on battle points. When you pair based on battle points, you basically take all the people that were so good that they got hundreds against their opponents in the first round, and you have them all wipe each other out in the second round. Some people, like us, look at that and say, I don't want to play all the Orc Buggy lists that are 100ing everybody. Maybe I get 95 points in the first round. I don't want to ever even be thinking about that. I want to be encouraged to get the most points I possibly can. And luckily, we're seeing tournaments switch to pairing based not on that. We're not going to talk about that anymore today, but I thought it was fair. And that's not taking anything away from Zach. This is not Zach's biggest tournament win by any equation. Zach is an incredible player who played his butt off to do what he did. I just felt like it was fair, Zach, to mention that you did play defeated people several times throughout the path, because people might want to know that. Okay.
I want to win. I'll take a win however I can get it, right?
Right, no, it's fine. And I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I think that was a fair thing for us to bring up, because I was confused the first time someone mentioned to me not pairing it on battle points, because it's all I had done. Like when I started in 40K, that was the standard, and it's been the standard the whole time. But when you really think about it, it's silly to pair people based on battle points. It literally means that you're pairing off the people that have the we table people lists at the beginning, right? And I would rather the good players meet at the end than at the beginning. So
What's also
I think
nice about
strength
that
schedule
is round 3, you don't have a bunch of people who are sort of casualing through the mid tables, and then the people who got pushed down from those hundreds down there with them. Round 3 can have a lot of skill mismatches. It's nice to separate the game from that.
Right. So what people are doing is win path, which basically means that all the undefeated people randomly into each other early, and then later it's paired based on how difficult your path has been. Anywho. All right, Zach, tell us about Thousand Suns. What did you take and why?
Yeah, so before I start that, my power is out. My phone is plugged into a battery backup. We should be fine, but if I disappear, that's why.
Okay, great.
So I've been working on Thousand Suns since the book came out, trying to figure out what's going to work for me. So my list is 2 detachments. One of the first things you have to ask when you're running a Thousand Suns list is what cults do I want to take? Because every cult has a psychic power, and there's some relics and warlord traits that do different stuff. So I have decided that I like running a Mutation Detachment and a Time Detachment. So Mutation has a spell called Warp Reality, and it lets you basically target a terrain piece, pick an enemy within 3 inches of that terrain piece, and they have their movement and -1 to advance and charge. It's really good if you just need to pick something and be like, that right there is not going to participate, or not right now. So I'll come back to that during my games. There's a bunch of times when that basically sealed the game for me. And then Time lets you res a model in a Time unit. And I have a 10-man unit of Terminators. So that combined with a stratagem allows you to res 2 Terminators. And there were multiple games where my opponent killed 7 or 8 Terminators gross and 0 net, which was fantastic. So in my Mutation Detachment, I have Armin, I have a Infernal Master, and I have a Sorcerer. I have 5 units of Rubrics. 3 of those have Bolters, 2 have Flamers. It's 4 Flamers and a Sergeant. And then I have 2 individual Spawn, and then 2 Rhinos. And then in my Time Detachment, I have a Sorcerer on Disc, and a Sorcerer on Disc, and Terminators, and 1 unit of Rubrics.
You go through those sorcerers for us, Zach? Tell us the overall and their roles, because they're very different from each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to back up to that. So, partly for game reasons and partly to make my life easier, I actually silo my powers by character. So I like, for example, Armin has all direct damage powers. That's basically because I want to be able to go through all my direct damage in one activation, or a lot of it in one activation. I also want to minimize the amount of real estate I need to put models in to do direct damage powers, right? Like, the powers don't go very far. They only go 18 inches. So sometimes I'm struggling for real estate where I'm going to have guys in range to smite and behind my Terminators. And I don't like, therefore, to have, like, Doombolt on one guy who also has prescience, and then another guy who has direct damage powers. I want to be able to put 2 models where the direct damage has to go and just do the thing with them. Mm-hmm. So Armin has all direct damage. He has Doombolt. He has Baleful Devolution, which is a wonderful casino power against big units. And he has Gaze of Hate. And then I have a Sorcerer. The Sorcerer is on foot. He can't go under disc, he's a Sorcerer. But he has Glamour and Weavers, so he's my buff Sorcerer. So if I need to buff a different unit somewhere else on the table, I can send him off on his own. I have an Infernal Master. The Infernal Master has Prescience, and he has Malefic Maelstrom, which is the +1 strength, the shooting weapon. So it's going to make the Terminators Bolters shoot at strength 5, and the Soul Reapers go at strength 7, and the missiles go at strength 9, so it makes them all better. And then I have 2 other Sorcerers, which are probably the most unique things in the list. You might see some of these elsewhere. I have a Sorcerer on Disc who is in the Time Detachment that has Zinch's Firestorm, Warp Time, and I gave him the relic that lets you pick a power and roll 3 dice for casting that power, drop low. That's really important because Zinch's Firestorm, if you cast it on an unmod 9, it works on 5, so it's 9 dice, and normally it's 6s do Immortal, and if you cast it on 9, it's 5s do Immortal. So that relic's a really good combination for that. You can get cute and use the Kabbalistic Focus to let him cast it twice, so he can really zap something. And then the other sorcerer I have, I call him the Missile Sorcerer or the Suicide Sorcerer. He is probably my favorite piece in the list. So you can give him.
Oh, did we just lose that?
Swole by the Warp. Am I still there?
Yeah, you are. You need to finish. You need to say that over again. You cut out.
Talk about Swole by the Warp
yeah.
again.
Yeah, so after you cast all the buffs with Swole by the Warp and his upgrade, he has 7 attacks at Strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage. And you give him the Relic Disc and Aether Stride, so he has 15 inches of movement, he can advance and charge, he can fall back and charge, he can consolidate 6 inches wherever he wants, just like the Show Stealer Succubus. And with Warp Time, he can go 34 inches or so on average, and then charge. So he's really important because he goes and solves problems. Thousand Suns are not very fast, so sometimes your opponent has a problem unit in their backfield you need to get rid of, like, say, a squad of Hellions, or like a character hanging out, and you can send him on a mission and he'll kill something and die, but that's fine. That's his job. The linchpin of my list is the Terminators. So the Terminators are really strong. They basically never die. And I should put a caveat on that they never die as long as you don't put them in the middle in front of God and everybody. If you put the Terminators in the middle of the table, they're just going to die. But as long as you're careful and you play edges and you're patient with them, the Terminators basically never die. They shoot 30 inches, so they'll pick up basically whatever they look at if you vets them. So my list is built to be really patient. If you look at points in the list too, the to the last are the Terminators, Armin, who's on a disc, and the Sorcerer with Firestorm on a disc. That is by design. In this version of the list, those 3 things are very obviously to the last targets. In previous versions of the list, they were not. I used to have 2 Forge Fiends in my list. After playing against Colin on top table at Harbor Heresy, the Forge Fiends came out of my list because they're basically paperweights into Dark Eldar. And they got replaced by another Rhino.
You should mention that you put them in the list because of Dark Eldar. Like, talk about that, because that's valuable for people.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So the Forge Fiends I put in the list because I wanted something to interact at long range. They have 48-inch range. They have 8 shots at 8.22. So I thought they would be good at shooting raiders and helping getting things out of raiders early on or picking off something from across the board. It turns out that because Forge Fiends aren't core and don't get rerolls, they're really sad when they hit on 4s. In fact, I know 8 shots hitting on 4s is supposed to be like 4 hits, but let me tell you that has not been my experience. LFR works to make them really sad, but also forests make them really sad.
Yeah.
Colin and I had a practice game where we tied, and he parked 3 raiders with the front of their stuff in a wood, and my Forge Fiends put a big sad face at them. Yeah. And then we played again on top table at Harbor Heresy, and they just weren't. They're 320 points, and there's some matches where they're actually pretty good, but Dark Eldar is not that match, and that is the match I wanted to be able to win.
Yeah, I just ignored them the whole game and didn't let them shoot me.
Yeah, that's basically how they would do.
Yeah, I just hid from them the whole time, Lucas. It was very wog.
It also turns out, so the other thing about that I have discovered in playing Thousand Suns is rubrics are amazing. And rubrics are amazing not because they're super killy, not because they're super hard to kill, but because they're just hard enough to kill that for 105 points, your opponent's going to have to commit something that is more valuable to them than those 5 rubrics are to you. So if I put 5 rubrics in a piece of cover and spend 1 CP to make a -1 damage, the tools that are going to kill that are obnoxious, right? Like even 10, Colin and I have discovered that 10 witches will often not go through 5 rubrics.
It's awful.
It's always about like 1 wound too. It
Yes.
looks like the sergeant with a.
And nor the sorcerer. When the time that I took whatchamacallit against you.
The casino was like explaining. It was like nope.
No, it was I took it's not Shadow of the Warp. What the heck is it called? The Witch.
The Witch.
Yeah, and the only model that survived 2 different combats was just the sorcerer who's worth the points. It's like, okay, I'm gonna walk over here now. Like, no. Anyways.
Yeah, so actually, I'm gonna come back to that in a second about secondaries,
Okay.
about a boar. I think we talked about assassinate before. A boar is oftentimes the same way.
Okay.
So with my list design, Chuck and I at Hammer Out Cancer had this game where we were looking at each other's armies, and looking at the table, and we were like, man, these secondaries suck. And so then I opened the book and I stared at the book blankly for 30 seconds and was like, nope, they didn't get any better. So with this list, I wanted to build something where I'd step up to the table and have a plan for every game. So every game I can take to the last, because I can if I don't keep the Terminators and some of my casters alive, I probably lost anyways. So I almost always get 15 on to the last. Thousand Suns got a really good secondary called Mutate Landscape. It's a psychic action. You do an objective for 3 points, and importantly, there can be an enemy standing there and you can still do it. So I usually get 12 for it, sometimes 9, but I can go to any table knowing I'm going to do to the last, Mutate Landscape, and now I just got to find one thing to do. And my game plan is set. I can hold 2 objectives, get 40 points, I have good secondaries, and I don't care what you're doing on the other side of the table. I'm going to stand over here and do what I want to do. So with that in mind, we talk. Go ahead.
I was going to say we should get into your games, but go ahead. Finish your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Abhor the Witch. We'll talk about this in a lot of my games. Abhor the Witch is like Assassinate. If given the way I want to play my Thousand Suns, if you take Abhor the Witch, I already wanted to stand here, and if you take Abhor, I can stand here even harder. And now you're going to come impale yourself on me.
All right. So
day 1.
Solid list. You get there day 1. And by the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've played a bunch of games with this, and you've only lost to me playing Drukhari, right?
I lost to Buggies once.
Okay, fair. But you've also beaten Buggies a number of times in practice as well.
I have. I think, not counting Dark Eldar, I'm a combined 16-1 with the army.
Yeah. Just for those that are playing Chaos, that's an important thing to know. Now, Zach is better than most of his opponents. Just to be clear, Zach usually has the skill advantage. The only reason that I've had good luck into him is because I'm playing MSU speed. So, all right, here we go. Your first opponent was Zachary Hamilton. Zach, the other Zach, brought a significant amount of.
I did not play Zachary Hamilton in round 1. I played Will.
What am I doing here? Oh, you're right, you did. Sorry. Zachary Gray played Zachary Hamilton because there were 3 Zachs. You played William Gill, who I've played. He's from Lucas's area. He plays Custodes and is a fantastic opponent. Custodes lists are fantastically boring to read through, but we'll do that anyways. They are Shadow Keepers, and he has Trajan, and then a Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike with a bunch of adjectives after it. And then he's got a Guard Squad, a Custodian Squad, a Venetary Squad, and 3 Telemon, right?
That sounds right.
Okay.
So mission 1 is priority target. The first thing to know about the way I look at the board on priority target is I'm taking to the last, I'm taking mutate, and I'm taking priority target.
Yeah, so you have to go nowhere.
I can stand here in the corner. He won the role to be attacker, so he moved 1 objective, and he moved his home objective back towards him. So I think Lucas already talked about this. I took both the objectives on the sides and said, come to me. And that made one of my ones on the side easier to hold, but mostly it pulled his one out, so we had a harder time. He couldn't be on 2 hiding. He deploys his whole army basically behind stuff so I can't see it. I do the same thing. One of my rhinos, with the way the terrain was, I couldn't keep it totally hidden. He goes first, shoots that rhino with a couple things, doesn't kill it, moves into the center of the table. On my next turn, I make sure that nothing can be seen except that I don't want to be seen. I push 10 Terminators out. I shoot a Telemon, kill some Sagittarium in the middle of the table. Basically, we're just playing for position. The first really important thing in that game happens on his turn 2. So on turn 2, he moves a Telemon forward, he brings in Venetari, he fires everything at my Terminators because the only thing he has good sight on. The Terminators have a 3 CP strat for -1 damage. It turns out if you have Terminators standing in cover against 1 damage or now 1 damage that were 2 damage weapons with a 0-up save, they don't really go anywhere.
Shocking.
So he kills 2 or 3 Terminators. I know, right? They're immovable. So he shoots a bunch of stuff at my Terminators, kills a couple, whatever. And then in a move I think he wishes he could have back, he has the option to make an 11-inch charge with his Telemon. He makes the 11-inch charge. He nails it on the reroll with Eternal Penitent, and he goes into a Rhino that I'd put in front as a bump stop in case he wanted to make that play. The thing is, my psychic doesn't go very far, but if you put a Telemon, like point blank range in front of all my psychers, that Telemon's not going to be there anymore.
Right.
And it wasn't. So I poofed the Telemon, and I move up the middle of the table. Importantly, there's two pieces of terrain in the middle of the board, and his army is kind of stuck between the two pieces with a Telemon in front and a Telemon behind. So I warp reality the front Telemon. So it now has a 4-inch move. 4 inches is about the size of a Telemon's base, so now he has a Telemon that moves half and another Telemon's stuck behind it.
Nice.
So that's bad. I move some stuff forward to be charged food. I send my Yeet Sorcerer out as a sack piece to tie up his Venatari. I wanted to use my CC. There's a CP prioritization issue with my list. I want to vets the Terminators. The Terminators are my shooting piece that kills things, and they wound T8 on 4s when I vets. But vets is 2 CP, and -1 damage is 3 CP. And if you're trying to do both of those things all the time, you very quickly have no CP.
Right.
So I had to make a choice of whether I was going to use vets or save for -1 damage. I couldn't use vets if I'm going to get shot by Venatari, so I threw away the Sorcerer to tie up his Venatari. The Sorcerer died, but whatever. I didn't get shot by Venatari. On his next turn, he couldn't get as far forward as he wanted because Telemon was slowed down, and the other one behind it was stuck. And so he lost both his Telemons, I believe, on the next turn. And at that point, he was basically out of models.
Yep.
So that was that.
Let's
Killing
move.
3 Telemons is no small thing.
I think I think you're right. Killing the 3 Telemons is hard. I think if he had held back one more turn and just put some meat in front of his Telemons and then shoved all 3 of them at me at once, I would have had a much harder game.
Sure.
But he kind of let me eat the piece.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about a lot on the show, it's something that Chuck has brought up a bunch, is that there's a lot of armies that have a bunch of extra medium and short range damage that you don't have to take in a normal game very often. And so if you get too close to those armies, like the Ultramemes are a perfect example of this. Yes, the Ultramemes have long range firepower and a bunch of it, but if you get close to them, they have a comical amount of small arms fire that doesn't get to shoot you normally. They're also good in combat, and they don't get to charge you normally. So a lot of the times when you go too aggressively at an army, all you're doing is enabling it to put more damage into you that it wasn't going to get to do otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what it sounds like when you charge one Telemon in and you're like, oh, all of your smite wouldn't have reached this turn, Zach, but let me help you. Let me make sure that you're getting to maximize and be efficient with your damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because you make an 11-inch charge doesn't mean you should.
Right. All right, then you played our good friend and friendly neighborhood shopkeeper, Jason Bird, who is still trying to make Nurgle work because that's his world. And he has...
Nurgle bless him.
What's that?
Nurgle bless him.
Yeah. I also played against this list, and on the first turn against him, I measured 17 inches from the front of his army and put dice on the table, and he said, "No, my weakness!" Because that's Death Guard. It's like, oh, you're just going to make sure I never get to charge you? And I'm like, yes. Anyways, he has a Mortarian's Anvil battalion with the Foul Blightspawn, Relic Foul Blightspawn, which is cool. Plague Surgeon, Malignant Playcaster, Typhus, 3x10 Poxwalkers, 2 Contemptor Dreadnoughts. He does take the Hellforge Cyclone Missile Launcher. One of the things that I think is interesting in the world is that Chaos players always take that add-on and Space Marine players don't. And I don't know why that is. Does anybody, just out of curiosity, does anybody know why that is?
Yes,
Well,
it's definitely for long-range shooting.
Oh, okay.
Death Guard has exploding 6s.
All right.
So
I mean, yeah, these
Like,
Contemptors are more efficient than Marine Contemptors. Like, these guys have a lot of buffs.
In the world of really quick, Colin, in the world of buggies, everyone should probably take the Cyclone Missile Launcher.
Is it
Just saying.
Strength 8?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
They should also be looking at doing heavy plasma instead of the Volkites, which is a hot take
That's also
that
a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
is interesting.
Then 3x3 Death Shroud, Tallyman, 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, and then a Chaos Allegiance Nurgle detachment that has a Poxbringer and 2 Nurglings, 2 units of Nurglings. Which, by the way, in my game I killed with the macro plasma incinerators on the Redemptors, and I'm only sharing that because Chuck knows how I like to shoot incredibly heavy weaponry at Nurglings, and that's the thing that I enjoy.
What you got to do.
Yep. Well, I needed them to die, and they did. All right, Zach. So my guess is that this game is not particularly interesting because you are playing substantially better Chaos rules, but tell me if I'm wrong. Go ahead.
You're not wrong. So I have played a lot of Death Guard, like Colin said earlier, and the frustrating thing about Death Guard is, like I said, people just measure 17 inches. So the thing is, smites go 18 inches.
Weird.
And if I'm willing to risk rolling an 11, I can have like a line of sorcerers, like 16.5 inches away from you.
Uh-huh.
So the problem is, so your Terminators end up either deploying somewhere meaningless or deploying somewhere where people can get at them. Neither of those work. I went first. I redeployed my Terminators and yeeted all my sorcerers up behind them, and I was able to smite and shoot his models. I picked up, 3 or 4 Terminators, Typhus, with targeted smites. I picked up a lot of his hitting power on turn 1. After 2 turns or 3 turns, the only thing he had left were his Plagueburst Scholars and his Dreadnoughts sitting in a corner. And that was basically the game. There's not a lot to talk about there.
All right, moving right along. I'm sure Jason was a lot of fun.
Oh, Jason's great. I love Jason. In fact, I've played him a lot, and he's always running Mono Nurgle, and I'm running some other Chaos that has a lot of tools he doesn't, and it's always a sad story.
I've now prepared a segment of the show where I'm going to make fun of Tanner, which I think everybody's going to really enjoy. So we have a guy in our meta named Tanner, and I believe that if you're making fun of Tanner, I believe that his name is Tanner Hebert, if you're making fun of him. That's not how his name is actually said. And Tanner is a phenomenal general. He is very good at 40k. Tanner, though, likes to think that he can bring crazy, crazy lists and that they're going to work. And so the night before the tournament, he tells me, I'm going to take Dark Angels and the buggies are all going to lose. And we're talking, and I say, well, don't play Zach. That's literally what I said. Because I played Dark Angels. I've played them. And I know that they have no interest in smite spam. Right? That list does not want to deal with smite spam. It does not have the appropriate tools. So he says, okay, I'm going to play Zach, and I'm going to beat him, and I bet you $1. That was my Friday night conversation with Tanner. So, Tanner has his, I'm going to kill orcs.
Very relevant, Colin. By the way, I've got said $1 right here.
Oh, he did give you the $1?
It's on its way. Oh, yeah, I collected.
Okay.
Oh, Colin, now you owe me.
I actually wanted him to write something I might, next time he's here, I might take that $1 and have him write something embarrassing on it so that I can frame it and put it on the wall. Maybe he should write Colin knows more about 40k than me, Tanner, and he'll put it in maybe something like that. I like Tanner a lot. I'm glad that Tanner's in our meta. I'm glad that he is going to be the Oregonian team captain for the 5v5 Oregon versus Washington tournament that we're going to be doing. So that'll be great. So this is an incredibly boring and awful thing to read because it's Dark Angels, which I think have no place in the meta. Sorry, Dark Angels players. Stop being bad Templars, and then maybe we'll talk. I'm being unnecessarily mean to Dark Angels players. Okay. So, Vanguard Detachment. Azrael. Deathwing Ancient. Shockingly, that Deathwing Ancient is the guy handing out the -1 damage thing. 10 Deathwing Knights, which I don't like at all, but that's fine. I think that gun Terminators are great. Thunderhammer Storm Shield are great, but whatever. Ravenwing Apothecary. Then he's got a Talon Master, a unit of Incursors, and then he's got 3x3 multi-melta attack bikes. Now, an important thing to note about multi-melta attack bikes is that they only sound like they're cool. They're actually terrible. So I'm excited to hear if they did literally anything in the game against Zach. How did it go with Tanner, Zach?
So this may sound obvious, but the first thing to know is Ravenwing models are really fast.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that's like, yeah, duh, but so in this game, he took minimize losses, Abhor the Witch, and Stubborn Defiance. I took the last, Mutate Landscape, and minimize losses, because I want to stand here in my corner of the table. That sounds great.
I'm standing over here.
Yeah, so I went first. I shot at some of his bikes. I failed to clear a squad. I killed like 2.5 bikes. So, of course, 1 heals and reses. He had his Terminators on one side of the table. So before this game, Tanner and I talked. And we talked about what constraints I need to worry about. And we agreed that I needed to stop him. I didn't need to not let him just dump his Inceptors into my Terminators. And I needed to not let him charge my Terminators with his Knights. Those are the 2 things I must not let happen, otherwise I'm probably going to lose. So on turn 1, I warp reality the Inceptors so they can't get in position. I don't do much. His first turn, he starts moving the Terminators up one side of the table, does Stubborn Defiance on his back home objective with his Incursors. I should say this is a Hammer and Anvil deployment, by the way. This is Hammer and Anvil with 3 objectives, basically in your DZ.
Okay.
It's a hold 1, hold 2. So I shoot some bikes, and that was actually disappointing because bikes with the 4-up invul are annoying. And then on his turn, he moves Terminators up the side, moves a bunch of his bikes to the middle of the table. The only thing he has on the side of the table with my Terminators is his 2 bikes holding 1 objective. He picks up 5 of my rubrics that are holding my 3rd objective. And so going into my second turn, the only thing he has on the right side objective on his thing is 2 bikes, and I'm off my left side one. So I actually, because he took a bore, I made the decision to abandon my left side objective and just push him off his right side one and not feed him units, because I want to make a bore a problem for him. I don't want to make it a source of points. So I slowed his Terminators down to the side of the table.
For our listeners, Zach, it's often common in a game of that level. Zach needs 2 objectives. He doesn't need 3. So Zach is saying, I'm just going to change which 2 I'm going to hold. That's all it is. And we've had that happen a bunch when we're playing, and I'm playing Drukhari, where I'll just be like, actually, no, these 2. Right? If you can just pivot your whole approach. That's what Zach's saying.
Exactly. And, if Tanner had made a different set of decisions that would have allowed him to hold his 3rd objective in a way I couldn't get him off of it, I would not have been able to do that. I would then have been forced to actually play for my 3rd objective.
Right.
Though if you look at Tanner's list, he has 10 units. So he doesn't have a lot of stuff to just put on objectives and hold them. That's actually, I think, the biggest weakness of that list. So on my second turn, I basically shuffle around. I kill the 2 bikes on that 1 objective. That was the only thing I had to do, so he doesn't get a 15. And I'm basically just trying to play for attrition and play for time. So I score a few points. I stand there, turn the turn back over to him. He's now down 1 squad of bikes, whatever. In his second turn, tries to advance the Terminators that are slowed down and rolls a 2, and is like, oh, I should re-roll that, and rolls it into a 1. Warp Reality has no minimum 1 rider on the -1 advance and charge, so his Terminators got to go 2.5 inches. So they're basically stuck on the side of the table doing nothing. He has a unit of bikes in the middle of the table. I had made a decision to not expose rubrics. So on my back home objective, all I had was a Rhino, because I didn't want to give him things to shoot to get abort points. So he cleverly realizes he can yeet a unit of bikes onto my back objective and put me on a 5, which he does. So he sends some bikes on a mission into my backfield. He actually, in doing this, moves his stuff out and doesn't move the Inceptors out, but fires all of his bikes and a Talon Master at my Terminators. All of the dice go the wrong way, and I lose half the unit.
Okay.
So, yeah, going into the top of my third, and they were fully buffed. They had a 4-up invo, -1 to hit, just didn't matter. So going into the top of my 3rd turn, I get a 5 on primary, half my Terminators are dead, and I'm starting to get worried. So I pull my Terminators back off my right objective, push Rubrics and a Rhino up to hold it. I res 2 Terminators, I kill the 3 bikes that are on my home field objective, and I continue to slow down the Terminators, to keep them isolated. So at this point, I'm starting to go, oh crap, this could be bad, because I'm on a 5 on primary, and I could see this going horribly. So in his turn, he moves. So he's got 1 unit of bikes left. His Apothecary, his Talon Master, all his Terminators, his Inceptors, and the guys doing Stubborn Defiance. He now, because my Terminators move back towards the middle, can make a play on my front right objective. He sends 3 attack bikes up there, a Talon Master, the Ravenwing Apothecary, and he brings the Inceptors out. So, Colin, you've played Inceptors as White Scars. When you shoot Inceptors at stuff, what do? They do one of 2 things. What are those 2 things?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they kill themselves. There's a 50-50 chance that they're just all going to die.
Yep. So he has a 5-man unit of Inceptors. 3 of them blow themselves up with their plasma, putting him out of coherency and killing a 4th in morale.
Ah, yes. Excellent.
It was pretty sweet. They did a total of and of course, all the 3 ones that killed themselves blew themselves up with the first gun. So he kills maybe 3 rubrics with all their shooting. He does take the objective from me because he has a bunch of models over there and Rights of War. But at that point, going into my top of my 4th turn, I realize the board state is solvable, right? Now that he's moved Inceptors out, his backfield isn't screened. So I smite him off the objective in my front right. The first time in the tournament, I did this cute play that Chuck and I actually discovered in a practice game. So I teleport my Terminators to his backfield, and they're missing models, so I res models, and it sets up a 5-inch charge. So I charge his back unit. He now has a 5 on Stubborn Defiance and can't get any more. I pick up 6 units that turn, 3 characters and 3 units, and he is now on a 0 on minimized losses, a 5 on Stubborn Defiance, and like a 3 on a Boar, and that was the end of the game. It was a really interesting 3 turns, and then as soon as he ran out of resources, it was just over.
Right, and that's what I would have predicted, because, like, you do too much damage for what that army has, right? Like, even if you never touched the Terminators, you still win that game, is what I think.
I literally just slowed his Terminators down and let them be on the far side of the table and said, I don't care about you, you don't participate, I'm going to kill the rest of your army.
Right. So, what did you have to do to earn a second Dark Angels matchup? Because you play Dark Angels again. What?
I had to be the worst winner, Colin.
Okay. Well, after beating Tanner by 40 points, Zach was put into Nathaniel Moss. I think I've played Nathaniel before, but I don't know him very well. He was rocking Dark Angels as well. Deathwing Ancient, 3 command squads that are Thunderhammer and Lightning Claw. I like those a lot. Those little 2-mans are my favorite. He has a big unit of dudes that have a mixture of Stormbolters and Thunderhammers. He's got a Ravenwing Apothecary. Then he's got a unit of... Sorry, just making sure my dogs are okay. Of Relic Terminators of Lightning Claws. He has a Ravenwing Talonmaster, and then he has a Redemptor, 2 Plasma Redemptor, a Contemptor with Volkite, 2 Contemptors with Volkites. I don't know how old this fits, to be perfectly honest. This seems like way more than Tanner brought against you, but the reality is that 9 attack bikes is really expensive. So, this looks like you just completely put your fist through his army. Is that accurate here, or what happened here?
Well, in describing my game with Tanner, you'll notice that I said the first 3 turns were really interesting, and those were turns where he was using his attack bikes almost exclusively to play the game.
Yeah.
So it's like my game against Tanner, except without the attack bikes.
Okay. Just
I just moved forward. He had nothing to put in front except his Terminator, so I just moved my army up and put Psychic into his Terminators, and then there weren't Terminators anymore.
Yeah, the Deathwing Terminator blob is super durable until it's not. There's a bunch of things in the game that can just kill it, and one of the things that can just kill it is Thousand Suns Smite plus shooting, unfortunately.
I imagine they're also not a huge fan of the competitive edge Whip Succubus.
Yeah, I would think that's true. We also learned that... I guess Hellions are much worse against them than they are against you. Hellions are really good against the Thousand Suns Terminator brick. Zach and I have seen that multiple times. But that's why Zach uses the power to make sure the Hellions can never get to them. But now that I'm thinking that through, the Hellions would be -1 damage, and I would be a 2-up save on Storm Shields. So, like, it's all terrible against the Dark Angels ones.
Dark Angels get real Storm Shields. I only have a pseudo Storm Shield in shooting. They have a real Storm Shield all the time.
Right. Okay.
Zach, his list could I have -1 damage. Not that that mattered in our match, but...
Could I ask a quick question, Colin?
Yeah, you bet.
Zach, would that have been a much more interesting game if he had Lazarus? I'm seeing a lot of Dark Angels players take Lazarus for the 4-up shrug against Grey Knights and Thousand Suns in the meta, and I'm wondering if that would have given you some pause.
It would have made my life much harder. It certainly would have made my life more challenging. In fact, it looks to me like a lot of Dark Angel players with the points increases after their release have chosen to remove some of the tools that make them specifically good or help them against Dark Angel and Grey Knights. And I think in the current meta, that's something that will have to be reversed if Dark Angels are going to be competitive.
Well, that's actually the problem with Dark Angels, is that the list that was working was too tight, and then it gained 200 points. And so, like, it's like, do you remove the stuff that plays missions, or do you remove kill power? And I don't think the Dark Angels army actually can afford either of those things. That's why I'm so down on them right now.
Just start over.
Yeah.
They're too expensive.
Yep. All right, in your final round, you play Jonathan Starks. He's the guy that has the all-shooting Drukhari rather than the punch Drukhari. And it looks like that game was super interesting. So let's spend a bit of time on that, and then I want to get both of your thoughts. I forgot to ask Lucas how he's changing his list going forward, so we'll talk about that as well. But go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, so when I saw that in the last round I was going to play Drukhari on Overrun, I basically got my brown pats out because I knew this was going to be bad. And then I looked at his list and I was like, oh, this doesn't have the really fast trade pieces that are going to knock me off my objectives and hold me to 0 primary. This could be interesting. So before Lucas had just played him, I was like, hey, is he going to try and keep his whole army behind the Kronos and shoot me with the Kronos in front? And Lucas said, yeah, probably. Going into that game, I thought in my head was, okay, if that's what the list looks like and that's how I was going to play it, I'm probably going to double down on be defensive. So I took Banners, I took To the Last, and I took Mutate for the ultimate stand over here and do me type of game plan.
Mm-hmm.
John took a Boar. When I saw that John had taken a Boar, I smiled and was like, okay, this plan is going to work. Because I knew he would have to just run across the table. I mean, I could just stand there. The table we were on, it's on a war deployment, and the table we're on has basically 3 buildings just in or just in front of the DZ. And then the middle of the table was pretty open with a couple of forests in it. So there wasn't a ton of space for him to like move his stuff up while hidden, which was pretty helpful in the end. I deployed my Terminators in the middle of the table. I put a Rhino and Rubrics on each side objective in the corners, and I tried to basically just hide all my stuff so that I wouldn't get shot. I ended up going first. I put up Banners, I did a Mutate, I got all of the guys out of a Rhino on one side and moved the Rhino forward to prepare to like move block with it. And then I used my Terminators to shoot a Raider, and I blew up the Raider that had Drazhar and some Kabalites in it, and I slowed down the front unit of Kronos. So this was John's first game against Thousand Sons. So he hadn't, for example, shot Thousand Sons Terminators before. So he moves his Kronos forward, and he moves the Kronos forward and basically keeps the rest of his army in his DZ. I think like one Raider might have poked its front out of his DZ, but he basically shoots a bunch of stuff into my Terminators, and that feels bad. That always feels bad. He kills like 2. And then having done that and having stuff left to shoot, I think he gives up on shooting the Terminators because I have told him before the game they res. So he ends up shooting my Rhinos, and he pops 1 Rhino and cripples 1 to 1 wound. I think when he was shooting my Rhinos, he thought that I might be trying to be aggressive or go and get him. You can do that with Rubrics out of a Rhino. You can get him out, move advance or move warp time, and then charge onto someone's like home objective or something, and that's good on a whole 203. I think he thought that was what I was going to try and do. But going into my second turn, I just hide everything because I don't need to go to you. You took a Boar, so I hide all my models. I psychic the unit of Kronos in the middle of the table. I knock them down to like 1 guy at half strength. I injure another Kronos and slow the back unit down to still has 2 guys. And I say good enough. And I turn the turn back over to him. So at the beginning of his second turn, he looks at the board and looks at me and says, "You don't really have to go anywhere, do you?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's correct."
I've built a little fort here. I've built a little fort here. It's very comfy. I'm just going to say right here, I like that I don't have to walk around the table. I'm here. I'm good to go.
I think that's great. At the end of the game, I actually end up with my Terminators across his DZ on 2 of his objectives, but that's not till late. So on the bottom of turn 2, he realizes he needs to do something different, and he makes the play to get aggressive at me. I think if he had conceptualized the game differently at the beginning, he might have deployed differently even with the secondaries. So I feel like he wasn't optimally positioned with the game set he was in. So he jams the Kronos at me, though there's not much left. He gets the Archon out of one of the Raiders and rolls in advance. He doesn't go as far as he wanted, so he ends up parking a Raider with an Archon behind it, behind a wall of one of my buildings where I can't quite get easy line of sight to it. He also, at that point, realizing he needs a bore point to start shooting everything into my Rubrics. I think he maybe killed a unit of rubrics and got one down one guy. He starts chipping up on my rubric squads because he needs more points. He totally ignored the Terminators on his second turn. That's probably the right thing to do. Shooting the Terminators is rarely productive. So he chips up a bunch of my squads. He moves forward from me. He moves a squad of Cabalites out in the middle and has Drazhar, blocked by 2 Chronos, some Cabalites in the middle of the table, like making a charge towards me. And so going into my turn, I am 1 turn away from getting charged by Drazhar, the Fight Last Archon. He has like 3 Raiders, 20 Cabalites, and 2 Chronos like in my face. And so my third turn, top of 3, I realize this is where either I'm going to win or lose the game on this turn. So the things I realized I needed to do were I needed to stop him from having as many Chronos as he did, and I needed to make sure Drazhar and the Archon don't get to fight me. So I move all my stuff around. I use Zinch's Firestorm guy to zap Drazhar twice, and he dies.
Yep.
I moved the Suicide Sorcerer out, because he has a Raider blocking for an Archon. He hasn't played against the Missile Sorcerer before, so my Missile Sorcerer advances and goes 21 inches and just stands right next to the Archon and says goodbye. Smite him. I make it go flat 3. I add D3 to it. It's 5 damage. The Archon falls over dead. And then I'm also able to pick up the 10 Cabalites in the middle of the table. I blow up the Raider that the Archon was standing behind, and then charge the guys that were inside it with a squad of 5 rubrics. And I basically collapse everything on that side of the table. So now he's basically wiped on my right side, and I still have all my Terminators and all my characters. And then on the left side, he has his Whip Succubus who's come forward. He has a Raider full of Cabalites, an empty Raider. He still has his Ravager in his backfield. And on my left side of the table, I've got like a couple squads of rubrics, probably 3 units of rubrics holding down those 2 objectives. But I know I'm quickly approaching a place where that side of my table is going to collapse. And I have a reposition with my Terminators, and I know that like how I choose to use the reposition is going to determine how the rest of this game goes. So on his turn, he moves his stuff forward. He shoots me some more. I think he finishes a squad of rubrics or 2. And I know that going in the top of turn 4, I know that he's about to collapse my left flank, and I have to decide whether I'm going to move my Terminators to the left flank and try and push him back, or whether I'm going to teleport onto his side of the table. In turn 3, I intentionally did not res my last Terminator. I left a Terminator dead. Could have resed him, chose not to. That's because I wanted to do the teleport redeploy with a res for a 5-inch charge. So I decided I was going to try and clear his... I was trying to hold him as 0-1 primary. So in his middle back objective, he has a Homunculus and his Ravager. So what I do is I teleport my Terminators over into a corner, and they're going to res a model and make a charge onto that side where he has some troop squads or something. And then I send the Missile Sorcerer on a mission to his middle objective. The Terminators... combat, so I'm now tying him for that objective. My Terminators make their charge and clear off the other objective, so he's on a 0-1 primary. Was only able to take down 1 of his 2 banners, whatever, fine. So he gets 0-1 primary, and then as anticipated, he swings through and collapses the left side of my army. I end up actually with a rubric at like 2 rubrics left on my middle objective. We get to keep it because all he has is a Raider there and no OBSAC. And now it looks like we're playing Hammer and Anvil, but I'm further up the board than he is. Turn 5, I finish clearing up his stuff. I blow up some more of his stuff. He ends up killing 2 more squads of rubrics. And in the end, he has 10 points on a boar, like 11, I think, on banners. And, of course, he got 15 on herd because screw that secondary. I ended up getting 40 on primary to his 35, so I beat him by 5 on primary. My to the last cancels with his herd. My banners were 2 or 3 better than his because I was more knocked him off his objective sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And then on mutate, I got 9 or 12. It was a little bit better than he did on a boar.
That was a lot of work to win by 7 points, Zach.
Oh my God! Don't even. Yes, so there are 2 mistakes I made that could have gotten me. I could have cost him 5 points, so he couldn't 15 on the last turn. That would get me to 13 points, and I think I could have gotten another mutate in if I had been really cheeky about it. So I might have been able to get it to 16 points if I did everything right. But yeah, I had to work my ass off to barely win.
But did this, and I want to hear what you were going to ask too, Chuck, but let me ask this first. Zach, was it one of those games where you felt like sometimes you'll watch a football game, and I know that you're enough of I know that you're not a huge football fan, but you're enough of a fan to get this analogy. Sometimes you'll watch a football game, and the score will look close, but the whole game you won't feel like your team's going to lose, right? And sometimes 40K feels that way. Sometimes you're in a game and you just know it's going to be fine, no matter what happens. But there's other times where you feel like you're constantly clawing to get back in. How did it feel?
When I saw that I had won by 7 points and only 7 points, I was like, huh?
Okay. So you thought you had it the whole time.
I was pretty sure I was winning the whole match.
Okay. What were you going to ask, Zach?
You're in control, but you weren't pushing him down very hard. You were just sort of like, this is my space. I'm owning more of the board than you are, and we're staying in this space. I'm not going to let you push back at all.
That's exactly right. I think if he doesn't take a boar, if he takes some other secondary, and I can't just stand there and let him come to me, I would have felt much less in control, and the game could have been a lot harder for me. I don't know what secondary that is because he wasn't trying to like jam at me and get engaged. So he would have had to, he would have to have a very different conceptualization of the match. If he did, we play a very different game.
Mm-hmm. What's one of the interesting things with the Thousand Suns ability to swap an objective, I think this kind of thought is really important because you could also go into that if they did have something like maybe an army secondary, where if they don't take it, they take a boar, or they take that. You can swap your objectives and move into that defensive posture if you're only halfway there.
If he
I think that could be very powerful.
If he takes engage instead of a boar, I probably consider audibling banners into bring it down maybe because he has 6 chronos that are worth a point each. So like if he takes engage, I already know he's gonna try and displace me from objectives, and banners is the last thing I want to have. So I was thinking about that before the game, but he took a boar, and I was like, okay.
And so we have this conversation pretty regularly. Go ahead, Lucas.
If he's taking engage, he's not taking herd, right? And herd is just better, right?
Oh, I didn't. So I don't Dark Eldar. All I know is they take things and then I lose. So,
yeah, herd is ridiculous, but it does at least conflict with stranglehold and engage, which is nice.
That makes sense because then if he's looking at what to take, he doesn't have a lot of great options on the menu.
There's no good third one unless he wants to take to the last, and then it's like he does nothing at all. He just sits there.
He's back into holding so much of his army back that doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right.
Zach, we've talked about Warp Ritual versus Mutate Reality or whatever quite a few times. In this game, I don't think it would have been great because of the way the objectives are. There's really no reason to be in the center of the table.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that's good because you could get some rubrics there and he wouldn't really care, right? And it would have been less objectives, less actions for you to take to get the same or more points.
Yes. If I were going to do that in this game, I would be doing the Yo-Yo Sorcerer to run out Warp Reality and then come back because he has a boar, right? I assume he might take a boar, so I don't want him to sack units of rubrics and give him 2 points a turn to get my ritual. He also had the stupid relic on the homunculus. So he had I tried a 9 maybe. So I thought about Warp Ritual briefly in this game, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to deal with managing that all game long.
It's less management than the Thousand Suns one specifically. That's why I thought it might be good. Because it's 3 actions.
It moved. Yes, it changes the management from being more actions to being more Kabbalistic focus based, because you then are starting to really manage your undeniable. You have to make both Warp Ritual undeniable and have an undeniable cast for the warp time backwards. So it just changes what your management is on. I did have an issue with getting units in position to Warp Ritual as much as I wanted because I only have 3 objectives on my side of the table, so I had to go get his objectives. But I think on this table, because there was no terrain in the middle, I think taking Warp Ritual would have been really challenging.
Yeah, it's going to be similar. You're going to have that difficult. The difficulty in getting the objectives on his side of the table is happening for every Warp Ritual. And if you ever screw one up, that guy's just going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
Zach, is that list basically solved for you?
Yeah, I think I am basically where I want it to be. I like the spawn. One of my really good practice buddies over here, Nick Krakauer, lives near me. He runs Spawn religiously, and having played against Spawn a couple times, I think they're amazing. But I just don't know what I would take out of my list. I think that right now, I think this is about as good as my version of Thousand Suns is going to get.
My opinion on if you want to play the Spawn is that you can't also play the Terminators, because the buff should go on the Spawn, and then the Terminators aren't worth what they were doing anymore. And I don't think taking the Terminators out is a good move, so you end up in this like weird space.
And also a lot of the time people like to say, well, I'll just drop one Terminator, and I think that's terrible in your version of your list.
Oh, no, it's. I mean, you drop the whole squad to do it because you need to give them the glamour and the Weaver for the impulse and the -8 and everything.
I thought we were just talking about one spawn, a couple spawn running around doing stuff. I didn't know we were talking about a giant unit of spawn.
No, that would be like 15 spawn.
I should also comment that I have 2 single spawn in my list, and they were basically useless all tournament. Actually, they screened a couple times that was useful, but like I put them in there because I thought that maybe I would want to take Stranglehold and sack the spawn for the third objective or whatever. It just never happened that way, and they were not useful.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so you have a tiny amount of points you could change because you might not want those 2 spawn anymore.
Yeah.
I bet they end up staying because there's nothing you can do with that 46 points.
Also, one spawn is a great way to hold a back objective if my opponent doesn't take a bore, and I can throw away all my rubrics to play for the table.
Okay. What? Any other chaos questions? Chuck's the chaos expert here.
No, it's hard for me because I don't really have a lot of questions about Zach's list. Mine is actually very similar to his at this point, as I've slowly adopted his ideas and pushed him off of Forged Fiends. So I think we basically agree on everything. I think it's a really good list. I think it's very flexible, and it lets you make detailed, intricate plans, which I think is why the list is good. I also think it's why it's so good for you to be playing it. You have the kind of mind that can do this, like, okay, if these 17 things all come together, I'm going to destroy this. I'm going to do this thing. And if they don't, I have a caveat for every step. That's a lot of mental exercise. So I think that really suits you.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that. I think, Zach, you're in the same boat I'm in, which both of us are tempted to play things that brute force people, right? Things that involve tanks or planes or robots or
buggies.
Stuff like buggies. Yeah, stuff like that is very tempting for you and I, but both of us have the same thing where we're just going to get bored. And I think Lucas has the same thing. I think that Lucas needs his army to be intellectual. He needs it to be that. I think that's how Lucas is beating people, much like you are, by repetition and practice and thinking through. I hope you guys noticed while you're listening that a lot of the times they'll have people on and they'll talk about what in their opponent's army can hurt them and what they have to hurt their opponent, but they don't talk about the secondaries at all. And you heard both of these guys talk about, okay, well, in this particular situation, I now know that if this happens, I win, right? Like, they're talking about how the numbers actually map up, right? Like, okay, well, he took Stranglehold. Can I stop him from getting Stranglehold 2 turns, right? Oh, he took Assassinate, Lucas says. Can I just not send my characters in, and then can I still beat him with him spotting me 15 points, right? This is top level 40k. What are the secondaries? What is the primary? How's the game going to go? How do I win 95 to 90, right? Like, if you watch John Lennon and Richard Sigler and Mark Perry, and if you watch Alex McDougall a lot, actually, is really good at this. If you watch these guys, they'll have big tournament wins that are 90 to 85, where the entire game was about stopping that opponent on the final turn from getting a 15 on primary and giving them a 10 instead, right? The entire game was about that. And that won them the game. And that's a level of seeing 40k and understanding it that's very hard. That's something that I'm not always good at. Sometimes I just want to smash. So, like, I totally get it. So, just a really interesting thing to talk about. So, I have a few more questions for these guys. Zach says his list is pretty much set. Lucas, how do you think your list will change?
I'm in a weird spot where I'm trying to balance a couple different things. First off, the list only starts, as I played it in the tournament, with 4 coward points, or CP. I'm debating going with fewer coward points, dropping the Gauss Patrol and making that a Vanguard, which would start me with 3. In my test games, that has felt very bare bones. Orcs don't need a ton of CP, but you do basically need to bank. The turn after you commit, you need to bank 2 for an interrupt and 2 for a fight on death with a character. And only starting with 3 makes that very suspicious because like you probably want a CP in advance on the turn in which you commit, and then you're only at 3 CP, and that's not very good. But the Goth boys are the weakest part of the list. There's no reason why there shouldn't be 10 more Storm boys, or probably 5 more Commandos. Really, what I need to do is drop the Death Skull boss on foot. He's cool because he's OBSEC and he's really tanky, but he's slow. He only moves 5 inches. He's just as fast as the normal orcs. So I'm trying to make him into a Goth beast boss with B-side Mantle because that relic is insane. And actually, Might is right for +1 strength and attack, which you might say, why aren't you taking Brutal but Cunning? But giving that guy strength 8 means he goes from killing like the Evil Sun Beast boss kills like half a buggy. This guy kills like 2 buggies by himself. So he's pretty awesome. He has like 9 attacks on the water, and so I really want that guy. So basically pivoting to 2 beast bosses and the trucker boss, and then debating taking more Storm Boys or Commandos, just cutting the random boys that are in the list. Makes me sad, but like they're just moving 5 inches a turn just sucks.
Let's find a weekend where you can come up and we'll stream a game of we'll stream a few things into the Orc Melee. I think that would be super fun.
I'd be so down for that.
All right, so Zach,
things...
sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
I was gonna say one of the things I've seen in a lot of orc lists that I think you could take advantage of would be the outflanking Burna boys, because that's they're cheap, and then at 9 total power level, it's easy to throw them into reserve. It would probably mean using up more slots, which causes up CP, and then using a CP to power them, so it maybe feeds differently into what you're looking for. But
I would consider like 2 squads of Death Skull Burna, or maybe 3. Well, it's tough because there's only 2 elites in a patrol, right? Yeah, there's only 2 elites in a patrol. So having the 3 squads for most efficiency with that 1 CP is tough, because I really want them to be Death Skulls, because they're really only good with OBSEC. Otherwise, they're kind of just crap. Oh no, I guess they could be Goths. They're pretty good as Goths. Yeah, interesting.
It's Goths. They're interesting. You almost want to spend for the CP, the AP in close combat, but it's too many CP. So they just turn into fairly punchy. I like them because they help with Drukhari a ton. If they wait until the Drukhari have come out of their boats, they come over and they just pick up which squads they do a decent job on Incubi if you get them out of cover, that sort of thing.
Yeah, if Drukhari pivot back to less, Kronos and more just tons of witches and infantry and objective playing stuff, I would really consider that. But right now, my Drukhari matchup is pretty good, and I'm not too worried about the 10 witches they have.
I think Drukhari have to take Kronos right now, and I think that the vast majority of players will not have the acumen required to beat Orc buggies with that list with Kronos Drukhari. So I think Drukhari is actually in a really difficult spot till the game's rebalanced. I also suspect that Drukhari is going to get hammered in the rebalance. I don't know that,
sure.
but if they do,
top tier as well.
What's that?
It's in that S tier section. I think everything.
Well, they're still winning like 68-69% of their games, and what I'm seeing is that Orc buggies are a problem. I'm hearing the Grey Knights are a problem. I've only won those matchups so far, but I haven't played like the super polished Grey Knight list. Which I kind of would rather play than Drukhari, but we don't need to talk about that right now.
I think that's the question I got the most at the tournament when people ask me about my list. It's like, how does it do into Grey Knights? Like, so far, so good?
Weird, right? Well, Grey Knights are really good. Don't get me wrong.
Chuck, let me tell you, put those 20 big choppers in, you'll be fine into Dread Knights.
I do fine with some kill rigs, man. Like, kill rigs just nom, 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 nom. Right. Let me show you my Waz Bomb.
Yep.
I don't want to see your Waz Bomb again. You keep showing me your Waz Bomb.
Well,
whoa.
The first turn's all about.
So, Zach, let's say that there had been a round 6. And let's say that it's some mission that's not stupid. It's not the Scouring. What do you think? How do you think that game goes with you and Zach? Or with you and Lucas, excuse me. No, I'm sorry, I was asking Zach first on purpose. Zach, how do you think that game goes with you and Lucas?
I think that my lack of experience into balanced orcs would be a real problem for me.
You haven't played against an actual orc list very much?
I played one game out at Bird's Place that was a little practice event we did against like a balanced orc list, and they're really fast.
Yeah?
Yeah,
that's challenging.
Tanner's a big T-Sons fan, and he's played it 4 times into me, and I've smashed him by 30 or 40 points every time. He doesn't have as much of the movement denial tricks as you do, and he doesn't have time. He's just basically going mono duplicity, which is interesting. But so far, I just like take a turn of setup, and if you come out and expose yourself to shoot me, then you're mispositioned, and if you don't, then I gotta hit you with my whole army. That's generally what it's. I try not to engage the Terminators. Again, I just simplify it down to you have a couple characters and Terminators, and then I've killed everything else. That's what I try to do, and that's usually served me pretty well so far. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, so in the one game I played against Orcs, it was actually on the Scouring, and I lost my entire army on turn 2, except for the Terminators and the characters, and I still managed to win. I know. Well, the Terminators and the characters, by the way, are 1,100 points, so there's that. I think that game would really come down to terrain would matter a lot, and if I can find a way to slow a key piece of your army down and then position so one or more other pieces couldn't just hit me and only eat some things, that would be the condition I just set up for. It'd look a lot like my game against Dark Eldar, except against Dark Eldar my rubrics can kill anything in their army, and against you they can't. So I think it'd be challenging.
I don't think so. The Terminators can't really be aggressive because the knobs are like Hellions. They're going to just come in there. They're going to be 2 damage apiece. Even the AP one's going to bring you up to a 3, and they're just going to hammer that unit. And even if they don't kill it, they're going to bring it down to that 1 or 2 left stage, where it takes you turns to get it back to capacity.
Also, the trucker boss kills like 5 Scarabacol.
Yeah, so if you can
but it's also not just that. As a close combat nerd like Lucas, let me just say that I think that I could give Zach a really good game without ever having played Orcs before, just by positioning and knowing where the fight last is. Right? Like Lucas has fight last, and Zach doesn't have the appropriate number of things to screen the fight last. So I would brute force the Terminators with the fight last and a bunch of other stuff. Am I wrong, Lucas? Couldn't I do that with a basic understanding of Orcs? Couldn't I make that happen?
You can do that if they're really, really aggressive with them. The problem with Orcs is their bases are really big, especially the fight last guy. So if Zach just positions intelligently, I can't actually fit enough units into those Terminators, even if they're all swinging in a row, to let them all swing as Zach is pulling casualties.
Okay.
I did that in one of my games against Tanner, and basically the Beast Boss swung, and then no one else got to swing because I was like, oh, out of room, got to pilot in a different direction.
Okay.
If you place that guy wrong, he's dead. The Suicide Sorcerer is just waiting to take him out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of complicated back and forth there.
Well, it sounds great.
Beast Boss is hard to kill for everything except for mortal wounds. So
yeah.
Let's get Lucas up here. Let's get Lucas up here sometime in the next 4 weekends. And we'll have Zach come over too. He can play Zach, and he can play me. Let's have some Melee Orc stream content. I think that'd be fun.
I'm down.
I'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, okay. Wow. I'm going to say one more thing. I'm going to say a couple more things. But one thing I do want to share with everyone, now that they've heard such great... Like, both Zach and Lucas, I thought Chuck did wonderful. Some of the best guests we've ever had. Which is why I've let it go for 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is well past Colin's normal, I no longer wish to pay attention to this, we have to stop the episode thing that happens. But I want to ask Lucas a question for the amusement of the audience. Lucas, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay. Lucas is 22 years old. For those of us that are like Chuck and I that are in our 40s, I am amazed by Lucas. And Lucas is newer to winning, I would say. Not doing well, but newer to winning. And I just wanted to give you that compliment. Because you understand 40K at a level that no one else that's 22 understands it. I would say that I talk to. I would say that Bortel is similar to you, and that he also understands the game incredibly, incredibly well. But
yeah.
I love spending time with you guys. Your enthusiasm and your knowledge for the game, and you still have the enthusiasm of being 22, which I haven't had for a while. So the everything's exciting enthusiasm. So just really impressive. Excellent job winning with a thing that no one would. In fact, I would have predicted against you if I had been doing a bracket. And not that I don't think you're great, but I thought your list was at a pretty significant disadvantage, and you did it anyways. And I just think that's really great. And thank you for sharing all of that with us. It was really great.
Thank you.
I also want to throw a compliment at Zach, who literally took a hard to play list that other people can't make work and went 5-0 with it. Thousand Sons are not S tier. People are not winning with them. They are not. And every other time you've won, Zach, if I'm not mistaken, you won with a thing that everyone else was winning with. I think this is the
Correct.
first GT you've won where you took, well, other than maybe 4 years ago, but recently it's the first tournament you've won where you took a thing that you made that other people would have counted out. So I think that that's because of how smart you are. I think it's because of how hard you worked on your list, how many reps you put in, and how well you understand the game. So let me throw that compliment to you as
Thank
well. Yeah.
I think both of you have lists that are really well designed for you.
Yeah.
It really shows that, like, you play the thing that you're good at, and then over the course of a weekend, you're not going to make as many mistakes. You're gonna jive with it, and it's going to work.
Let me
you
actually
really push that.
Yeah, let me actually even emphasize Chuck's compliment. I would not be able to make Zach's list work. Like, I've won more stuff than you, Zach, but I've watched you play it, and even if I'm the better player, which that's not the conversation we're having right now, but let's say I'm the better player, I could not play your list the way that you play it. The deliberateness and the patience, right, Chuck, would be just terrible for me.
Oh, it's when you were playing Dark Angels. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You would hate every minute of it, and then by turn 3, I would have been so passive. You just be like, "Fine, I'm coming out in the middle of the table then." Like,
Right.
Great.
And to continue that on, I actually think I could play your list, Lucas. I think you'd have to teach me, but I actually think I could play your list. I think it's very similar to how I want to play, but
Yeah.
I don't think Chuck would like playing your list. I think it'd be really good for him, but I think that your list, I think that Chuck's style of Orks is better fit for Chuck than what you're doing. I think you guys really tailored to yourselves, and I think that's really, really neat. And it's something that I'm going to try to focus on with new Tyranid rules. I'm going to try to play a thing that's uniquely what I want to play. So, good takeaway from
I'm
that.
terrified of new Tyranids.
Me too.
Oh yeah,
Should be.
because what needed to happen is Hiveguard needed to be stronger, right? That's what we were all
Yeah,
hoping for.
we really want it more indirect in the game right now.
Yeah.
I'm so
I
happy
think we should
that
have a
people
design
finally get to play them.
What's that?
Yeah,
Chuck?
right.
People will finally get to play them.
Yeah, right. It's funny. We talked on the Hive Mind episode about how it's great to say that Tyranids got a lot better, but really because of how bad all their data sheets are, it's really just the same 5 data sheets that were already good, and now they're better than they were. Right? Like
Yeah.
the lists are going to look exactly very, very similar to what they looked like before. They're going to
more
be
like they took
300, 400 points different than what they were before. Not like an entire rebuild like I think Dark Angels needs to be, or like the new Templar book is, where the whole army has to be different. What, Chuck?
It's appropriate without it being a codex. It's kind of appropriate.
Yeah,
This is just a power up of the existing army to be at a competitive level until they get codex.
Yeah,
that feels spot on to me.
I'm pretty excited about shooting Zach with rerollable damage Hive Guard. That's a thing that I think is going to be
God,
really good.
I want nothing to do with that.
So when we first got the rules, we ran all this math on rerolling, right? Because if you're just looking for raw damage with rerolling Hive Guard damage, you only reroll ones on damage, right? Because if you reroll 2s, the odds are you'll end up on 2, so you're not gaining anything. But what we hadn't thought about is situations where you're shooting into 3 wound models, and statistically it's very likely that 2 Hive Guard shots are going to kill the Terminator anyways. So if you roll 1 or even 2 on the first one, you should fish for 3, because it's still likely that 2 shots are going to kill that guy, but you might kill him in 1.
Well, also,
No,
the Herber's going to do -1 damage.
I'm sorry, I want to know
So
what
then-
Zach just muttered in response to that.
Oh, I said, yeah, even if you're shooting into -1 damage, it's still going to average 2 shots to kill a Terminator.
Right, and well, and then if you're doing -1 damage, you just fish for 3s anyways, because why wouldn't you? Right?
Yep.
So it's pretty great. Okay, so that's what's going on. Sometime in the next month or so, we'll have Zach and Chuck and Lucas and probably Mitch come out here. We'll do some stream games. We haven't streamed in a while. I want to play some Tyranids. I want to play some new Templars. I want to play some Grey Knights. There's some stuff that I'd like to play. So we'll get some people up here. We'll do that for you guys. Our next GT we'll all be going to, I don't know if Lucas will be there yet, but Zach and Chuck and Mitch and I will be there. It's going to be in Bellingham. It is called, let me actually advertise it, because JT does such a good job running that store. I feel like he deserves our shout out.
Yeah, definitely a good place to play.
It's
This
a
is
great
Dark
store. It's the
Dark Tower, yeah.
It's the GGGT, and it's called the General's Gambit. And I don't know if there's tickets left for it or not. I just don't. That's just not information that I have. But it is in November on the weekend of the 13th and 14th, and and round one. Oh no, it starts at 10. I thought for once there was a tournament starting at a reasonable time, but there was not.
Didn't start at 11.
That's true. It doesn't start at 11, or the RTT recently out here that started at noon. No, thank you.
Well,
Oh God.
Yeah, just
Gross.
yeah. I don't want to be here till 11 o'clock at night. We need to not do that. All right, so that's what's going on next. Then in December, Chuck and I currently have back-to-back majors, provided that COVID allows us, where we'll be going to New Orleans and Mary Slaneshmas on back-to-back weekends. So Mary Slaneshmas is also something we should. Mary Slaneshmas, with Bob not doing tournaments in Spokane, is easily the most important tournament in Washington State in this year. It is going to be a lot of people. Jason Bird runs a great tournament. He has amazing terrain. It's in Ocean Shores, which is a vacation community we go to in December for this tournament. So it's cheap as dirt. Food is cheap. We get to stay in a really ridiculously nice hotel for like $100 a night. Like it's a whole fun thing. That is December 4th and 5th. There are still tickets available. Just look up Mary Slaneshmas. Amazing tournament, worth flying out for, worth coming to. Anthony Vanilla's talking about flying out for it. Tyler and Michael Tempe from California talking about coming up for it. So I'm sure Lucas will be there. I think Tyler Bortell's flying out. Like, if you like BIFPOD, that's going to be your best chance to meet everybody from BIFPOD. But we're basically a huge amount of our patrons and us will be there. And I will for sure go to that even if I don't fly to New Orleans. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable flying to New Orleans. I haven't decided that yet. So, that's what's coming up in the next while, which is great. For now, though, we're going to let people go at almost the 3-hour mark. Thank you again to our wonderful guests who both did an excellent job. Zach tanking it on his phone with a phone battery with no electricity. Pretty amazing. I would have expected the 22-year-old college student to be the one with no electricity, but, whatever.
we're almost there.
Almost there. Okay. I actually hired Lucas to assemble Space Marine models for me recently to help out his college studentness.
Yay, money!
And you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
I do want to put a final note related to that I know will make Lucas smile. I did finish assembling and converting 10 knobs with big choppas during this thing, so they're ready.
That makes me happy. And I'm not even the
ready
guy.
to learn.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really do appreciate you guys. Remember that that this is just a game, and enjoying listening to how these guys did and thinking about what we're going to do is much more fun than complaining about the meta, which we didn't do at all, purposefully. So
We could have.
of course, but we're not going to do that because that's not what's fun. And it's also not helpful. Doesn't teach you guys anything. Whereas I think there was a lot in here that can help a player take their game to the next level. So with that, we're going to wrap it up for this episode. It will be posted live on Tuesday. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate you guys. As much fun as this is to do, if you stopped showing up and listening, we would stop doing it. So thank you, everyone, and we'll have more to talk to you guys about in just a couple weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.